Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Free Assange Online Vigil. This is week 35, day 4. This is our first vigil back from Washington, D.C. We have special guest hosts with us, Misty. Christy and Taylor are taking a little break right now. But just so everybody knows, this is day 357 in jail for Chelsea Manning with $248,000 in fines. It's day 3,374 since the start of the unlawful and arbitrary detention of WikiLeaks publisher Julian Assange. And it is 327 days since the brutal arrest and trafficking of the WikiLeaks publisher and multi-award winning journalist from the Ecuadorian Embassy to Belmarsh Prison. I would just like to say thank you for everyone that's tuning in tonight, and I really look forward to going through this with everybody. How are you today, Steve?
I'm beat. I am. But I'm stoked that we're doing this. We originally were all gonna take the week off, and then because we're masochists, we had already booked people when we were in DC. Um, so we will be joined by Jason Burmis and by Commander X at some point, and Commander X has promised to beam in through candlelight once again, which I get a kick out of that. I want to thank everyone that helped make DC and London possible. I know that we were doing that all throughout the week, but it's really worth repeating. Thank you. Like, we appreciate the hell out of you, and yeah, you guys are awesome. It was intense in the nation's capital, and we made some connections, and we set forward a chain of events that is just mind-blowing, especially in its potential, because I really think that in a couple of maybe minor ways to major ways, we sort of altered the course of history. That flag that is behind Andrew, if you don't know, um, when we got there and we got to our Airbnb and everybody was unloading all of the free Assange, all of the gear, the banners, posters, button stickers, what have yous. Um, her Twitter name is Plucille. I don't know if if you're on Twitter, she's at Plucille54. She's a very lovely woman, and she had these 3 different WikiLeaks flags. It looks like the one behind Andrew there. And she was like, I don't know what to do with this one. It's thicker, it's a little bit more cumbersome. I'm not sure what we should do about it. And so we decided that we would take it with us everywhere we went, have people sign it. The signatures that are on that flag represent a post-partisan ideology. They represent people of all political stripes who can commit with their names their support of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, and free speech. And that's really what it's going to take if we're going to move the conversation forward as upright human beings. So it was amazing. But yeah, I'll kick it over to anyone who wants to jump in now.
Well, so
Yeah.
I wasn't able to go to DC, so I have like a million questions for you guys. Like, what would you say was the overall vibe of like the reception that you got, walking around, talking to different people? Like, what was the atmosphere? Like, what was the feeling around what you guys were doing?
So overall, it was fucking incredible. Throughout the course of the week, we probably had 3 people, and Jason Burmis, the amazing man he is, chased down one of them that were heckling us. The other 2 were actually at the protest outside of the White House, so we were received really, really well. And even by like the local police forces, like I literally walked around, shook their hand, gave them cards, and said, "Hey, we're trying to spread the information that everyone else isn't." So I would like to say I hope that members of the Secret Service and DHS are watching right now because we gave them cards. We told them about the show. So I personally think it would be awesome if one of the guys guarding the White House is educating himself right now about Julian Assange. Um, Beyond that, we had the events just slowly built. So it started on Monday with the White House. We stood out there for about an hour, hour and a half, and gave speeches. Lee Camp showed up that day. Medea Benjamin showed up that day. Veterans for Peace, Code Pink, and a bunch of other organizations. We marched from the White House to the Trump Tower, Trump International Hotel, that's located about 2 blocks down, block and a half down from the White House. We gave speeches outside of there. Then we marched down to the DOJ, gave speeches outside of there for about half an hour to an hour. Tuesday, we went to the Hill, the like journalism studio, the Hill, newspaper thing, whatever you want to call it. Then we went over
Oh,
to
you want
ABC.
to talk about somebody chasing somebody down? You think Burmis chased down that heckler? Yo. I honestly can't remember who it was, but somebody says to Andrew, was that Crystal Ball? And Andrew, like, I've never seen him run before, so I can't say that was the fastest I've ever seen him move. But I can say without a shadow of a doubt that that is the fastest that I saw him move that week in DC. He took off after Crystal Ball, like, I don't know, like there was Olympic gold at the finish line, right? I mean, it was dead sprint.
And so
he shoots past her. Just woo, shoots past her. And
so slam the brakes. Well, first of all, because I was told she was wearing a blue trench coat. There was 2 women in a blue trench coat. There was the baby blue one that was closer, and then there was a dark, like, navy blue one. And I thought it was the navy blue. So I'm fucking sprinting. Run past her, stop, and I'm like, that's not the right trench coat. So I turn around, and she's, like, staring at me like I'm some kind of fucking crazy person. And I, like, run up and shake her hand. I'm like, oh, hi, Crystal. My name's Andrew. I'm an organizer with Action for Assange. We have protests going on the rest of this week. We'd really love for you to join us. And she said she would, but me, in my infinite wisdom, didn't have my phone on me because it was being recorded for a live stream. I didn't have a pen on me, didn't have any paper. So I took down her email address, but couldn't get her phone number. So I won't hold it against her this time. We are going to be in DC again, and I would love for her to join us and to speak on behalf of Julian, even if it's just our event, if it's not on her platform itself. So anyways, we went from the Hill to ABC News, and at ABC we started to kind of gear it differently because we started to get a little bit of an audience. There was people watching out of the windows. We were on the other side of the street, and so we basically were explaining to them, like, you're next. Like, if you guys don't speak up now, if you guys don't try to save this man's life and stop this court case, they're coming for you after this. And it was probably about 45 minutes of speeches akin to that. We had members of our group that read awesome different speeches. Like, we read the 2012 speech that Julian gave outside of the Ecuadorian Embassy, because it directly referenced him being extradited and all of the things that are happening in the world right now that he talked about a decade ago. And then after that, we went and yelled outside of the Washington Post for a couple hours, maybe like hour and a half. But we met this awesome college reporter, and I can't remember her name. And if you were watching, I am so sorry that I cannot. But she does like a comedy news show at one of the universities out there. And according to her, I still have to see the video, but she had Dana Rohrabacher on site the day that everything was coming out with Kim.com and with those backroom deals. So they literally have him, I don't know if it was recorded or just people taking notes, but literally answering the phone over and over as they're trying to do these sketches, because he just happened to be there and it happened to come out at this time. So I thought that was a really cool thing. And Wednesday, so to fast forward to the next day, we went outside of Chelsea Manning's prison for about 3 to 4 hours. We had a bunch of our Boston groups, courtesy of Ian Schlackman, helping organize that. So big thank you to Ian.
Baltimore.
And Baltimore. I keep saying the wrong city. I even said it on Fault Lines wrong this morning and kicked myself in the ass over it. But so we read Chelsea's letter to the grand jury, to her judge, Judge Trenga. We read Jeremy Hammond's letter to his grand jury judge. And then a few other speeches inside of there. We just opened the mic. Ian gave a great speech. Reverend Annie Chambers was with us. And she is the sister of one of the lieutenants of Malcolm X. So for her to come out there and for her to speak in relation to the tyranny that's happening now relative to what she experiences through her efforts and her activism and her congregation to what she's also experienced historically with being the sister of the lieutenant of Malcolm X. It was really, really powerful. So I'm pretty sure we have that clipped out. And if not, we'll go back and find it. Thursday? Well, I'm sorry.
Wait. You're forgetting Wednesday night.
Wednesday night. So
look, we Andrew mentioned that Jason Burmis was down with us. He came down Monday. He was gonna split the next day, and then that morning he finds out Alex Jones is hosting an emergency free speech summit, right? In DC, like at a giant fancy hotel. So Burmis went to go cover the Roger Stone sentencing. That's where he found out. And after that, he was like, "Well, fuck, I'm gonna go stay through tomorrow night. Like this is gonna happen. I gotta show up." So we decided amongst ourselves that we would go and Alex Jones, like, because he was not, he went like full Trump, and the last time he really talked about Julian Assange was a couple of years ago, and like, so we're like, fuck it, we're gonna Jones. So we all get dressed up, and we go to this thing. Before we got there, Burmis was giving an interview with Rob Dew. Burmis used to work at InfoWars like a decade ago. The first person Alex Jones ever gave a show to. Rob Dew also worked for InfoWars. And so Jason sees him in the hallway of this hotel. Sit down, let's have an interview. Alex Jones crashes the interview. So Burmis is like, "Hey, I'm here this week with Action for Assange. They're doing this and they're doing that and blah, blah, blah. What do you got to say about Julian?" Jones starts doing a bit, talks about how all journalists should be in prison and shit like that. Burmis presses him, fucks with him, finally gets him to like commit to how he feels about Julian Assange and what he thinks should happen. And it is, like when Alex Jones says something rational, which isn't like, it's less rare than you think, but like you have that moment where you're like, fuck, Alex Jones and I think exactly alike on this thing.
That's kind of like when Tucker Carlson tells the truth about war.
Yeah, like you want to die a little bit, but then you realize that it's probably good because of the different reach that they have. So as long as that information is getting out there accurately, like, I'm for it. At any rate, we walk in to Alex Jones telling a room full of right-wing influencers and their fan base, you need to stop supporting Donald Trump if he doesn't do right by Julian Assange. And we were like, oh, shit.
It literally defeated the entire purpose of us going there, right? So what happened after that was actually quite incredible. So that was literally the first speech given that night, was Alex Jones saying no longer support Trump if Trump no longer supports Julian, right? And then there was other speakers. Bill Binney's assistant came on and gave some new information about the transfer rates and about what he's working on right now and about how it wasn't a Russian hack, like point blank, period, was not a Russian hack, doesn't matter, right? That the information came from a flash drive to WikiLeaks. one way or another. That's basically how it got there. That's what the forensics of the information itself shows, as in regards to the DNC leaks, that everyone's like Russia, 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 right? So we managed to successfully turn this from a right-wing chest bump about Roger Stone into being a 4-hour-long event about everyone's support for Julian Assange.
Nice.
Some people didn't word things as well as I would like them to, as far as the extradition, because there are some people there that are pro-Trump. But overall, I was very, very proud of how that room shifted so quickly, simply by the energy that we brought to it for Julian. At the end of it, and it's actually a really cool clip, I get to go up and I'm talking with one of the InfoWars guys, like Q&A session, like I'm on the mic, he's on the podium, whole group of right-wing leaders behind him. And I explained that Julian Assange is facing 175 years in prison for the crime of revealing United States war crimes, for the crime of revealing U.S. corruption with our international allies, for the crime of revealing the United States torture programs in Guantanamo Bay. And it's met with applause. And it was quite incredible. I explained to all of them that if something happens to Julian, it will happen to us. When Julian is gone, we are gone. When Julian is brought here, we have no free speech. When Julian is extradited, we have no country left. And I was surprised how well it was received. The entire room ripped into applause. It was absolutely wonderful to hear that. And these are people that a portion of me ideologically agrees with, and a portion of me doesn't, because they have some stances that I don't agree with, but they have others that I do. And I personally think in this age and in this time of mass surveillance and mass propaganda, I would rather have us as people, as the people who are aware, regardless of political ideology, focus on the things that we have in common, focus on the ground that we can share. Because once we can have a way that everyone can agree, hey, we should limit the powers of government, we can then have further conversations about what Medicare for All would look like outside of the government, which would be handing it to National Nurses United, and just a bunch of different post-partisan conversations. So, but with that, though, I would like to welcome Jason Burmis. How are you today, my friend? We were just recapping the events of Wednesday.
I'm doing great, man. And thank you guys so much for doing what you were doing and being in front of the White House on Monday, traveling before the media on Tuesday, letting them know about Assange. Let's not forget about the DOJ and how many people were out there actually listening. You know, the people guarding the Department of Justice, their ears perked up when they realized, wow, you know what? Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning are being unjustly held. And of course, this continued on through Wednesday when we went to the Free Speech First Amendment Emergency Summit event. I left on Thursday, but you guys continued. And the extradition hearing, although it wrapped up for now Thursday, we didn't get a lot more answers than we had already gotten by Wednesday. And the bombshells that were broken, the interview with Cassandra Fairbanks, I mean, I feel like so much was accomplished. I just want to thank you guys so much for putting this together and really putting your nose to the grindstone and letting people know the truth about the issue that is Julian Assange and free speech, not only for all of us in this country, but around the world.
We're not even close to stopping, Jason. And thank you for coming down and joining us. That was incredible. It was great to hang out. We should do that again sometime. I don't think that the Free Speech Summit would have gone the way it did had you not had your interview crashed by Alex Jones and put him on the spot. I really think that changed the entire tone for the evening, to where when we were walking in, he was telling people stop supporting Trump if he doesn't do right by Julian Assange. It was incredible. But we're not slowing down at all. We're going to be doing live teach-ins. I'm in the process of organizing an event at the National Press Club for like early mid-April. It'll be a full panel full of journalists. It'll be something that you will want to see. And we're going back to DC in May. I know we have people that are part of the Belmarsh Brigade that helped us get DC and London. Thank you so much. You guys are incredible. We're gonna do it again. If you're able to support us, please do. If not, please fucking tell your friends. But yeah, thank you so much for coming with us, Jay. That was great. It was.
Let's talk about Jones just for a second. The bottom line is you have to hold people accountable. And it seemed like fate that all of a sudden this thing that was announced on a Sunday, I came across, I believe, on a Tuesday, the second day I was there, and said to myself, you know what? Yeah, Alex Jones has been persecuted. I may not agree with him, but at the same time, he shouldn't be kicked off Facebook, Twitter, etc. But he can't just make this about what's happening to Roger Stone. The larger issue is Julian Assange, and that was not being reflected on his website. And, I had seen Jones a couple times before the incident where he crashed my little interview with Rob Dew. And the reason that I didn't go up to him was because he was with his new wife. And I was like, you know what? Let's be respectful. Let's not get kicked out of here. Let's get him where he's going to actually have to comment on something that's important. And as much as he gunned for me from the very beginning, trying to put me down, I still got him on the record. And I think you're right, Steve. Let's be honest. He opened that thing with Julian Assange. Even Millie Weaver not only expressed her thoughts on Assange, but Chelsea Manning as well. And a lot of these quote unquote alt-right figures like Owen Schroyer had to talk about Assange, even mentioned Tulsi Gabbard, who continues to get screwed. She just qualified for the next debate. She got some delegates. Guess what? No, Tulsi, you're not allowed on the debate stage. We're just going to change the rules again. Like we changed them for Bloomberg. Now we'll change them again against you. It just shows you how rigged the system is. And now we see Super Tuesday. And I know all of us were shaking our heads over the weekend when Biden won South Carolina, but then you see Bootlicker and Klobuchar fold to the establishment, back an openly senile man. And now we're all supposed to believe that Joey B is going to beat that Trump train. The guy keeps saying he's going to beat Trump like a drum. I don't think he could drool on a drum successfully at this point. I think that would be pretty hard for him.
Not unless they had somebody following him around with it, and maybe catching the awkward head movements or the sudden urge to run across the room and sniff hair. We know that the goal was never to beat Trump. That's secondary. That's not the primary goal. The primary goal is to make sure that Bernie Sanders doesn't get anywhere near the White House. And all they have to do is have enough candidates in the race or enough delegates to pool together so that Bernie Sanders doesn't hit 1,901, that threshold that he would need to get through the first round of a convention uncontested. A contested convention has been the plan since 2017, probably a little bit before that. But after their stupid unity conference in 2017, Tom Perez came out and said, we're going to field more candidates than the GOP did in 2016. We're going to change the way the caucuses work. And we're getting rid of 20% of the superdelegates, but they'll be able to vote on the second round. But that would only happen if there's a contested convention. And gee, what are the odds of that? You'd literally have to run more people than they did in 2016.
I look at it this way right now. I don't think that they think that Joe Biden can win. I don't know whether they're planning on giving him a Hillary Clinton ticket. It seemed like they were trying to run that with Bloomberg, but all the money in the world couldn't get people to vote for him. I didn't think that was going to be a thing, but who knew? I think that Joe Biden wouldn't even have to be Clinton-sided. He'd simply just have to step down and be like, look, I've been babbling on TV the last 18 months. I can barely spit out a sentence. I obviously can't lead the country anymore. Or maybe he has his third aneurysm. Who knows? But let's be honest. Joe Biden right now looks and sounds 10 to 15 times worse than Reagan did at the end of his presidency when he was clearly senile. I mean, it's not even ballpark. The guy can't successfully say a sentence. And for shame on Fox News for not pointing this out, the supposed right-wing outlet. I mean, I did a 22-minute video today that easily could have been an hour and a half of just some of the times that Joe Biden couldn't successfully spit out a sentence or talked about a record player or said that white kids are what was it? Poor kids are just as smart as white kids. Are they? Well, thank you, Joe. That's great to know. I mean, the guy can't get out a sentence. He's got hairy legs. He loves kids jumping on his lap. I mean, again and again, he's looked so bad in these debates. It should show you how fucked we are in 2020 when Bernie was the clear front runner, and now they have literally rigged the game against him every single way they humanly possibly could.
So real quick, if you are a Bernie Sanders supporter and you're feeling disaffected, or if you're a member of the DSA or any of those like left-leaning organizations, and you have built-in organizing and activism experience, and you want to, continue to try to be on the right side of history, we would love to have you get on board with Action for Assange. We'll put a link to the Discord in the chat. Like, we need you on board for this. I've been trying to tell you that they're gonna do this for a really long time, and I don't want, and I told you so, I want you to get on board with what we're doing, because it's a tragically necessary and fucking on the inside wonderful and beautiful thing.
I frankly can't believe we have to try to convince people on the left that this is an issue that needs immediate attention. It's astonishing to me and super frustrating. You would think that, we've talked about Bernie and his silence before. Dude knows better. He knows this is going to get used against the left. It already is. And it's only going to get worse between Max Blumenthal and Glenn Greenwald. It's at some point, we're going to have to realize that this is a serious issue.
Well, I think when you put Jimmy Carville on national television as somebody that espouses the modern day left and says, hey, Bernie Sanders should just drop out, and then you put everybody full force against Bernie Sanders. He's a puppet of Russia. Socialism is coming. He's really a communist. Hitting those talking points again and again and again. Hey, I'm no Republican. I'm no Democrat. There's a lot of things I disagree with Bernie Sanders on. He is clearly the most qualified guy on stage at this point, and clearly has the largest actual base. I have a hard time believing that Diebold machines and other establishment voting machines aren't finding a way to vote for Joe Biden, as they've done for other establishment candidates in the past. Call me kooky or call me Greg fucking Palast. This stuff has been around forever. And the bottom line is, Joey B wasn't sellable 6 months ago. He wasn't sellable 6 weeks ago. He wasn't
in the
sellable
80s.
6 days ago. So why now?
So
He's
I'm
horrible.
actually
He's Trump. He is Trump. They keep trying to say we have to beat Trump, but he is Trump. Just with better hair.
No, he doesn't have that.
So I'm gonna pivot us a little bit. If you could though, Jason, you have your Zoom chat open on the bottom, or it's not pulled out.
Okay.
That way you could pop that out so when we message, it doesn't pop up on screen.
Yeah. Give me 1 second. I'll try.
You're good. I'm gonna actually pull up a video though. I want to get into the Cassandra Fairbanks stuff real quick.
Uh-huh.
And I'm gonna start by playing just a little bit of a clip from our interview. So let me get my share going here.
All right. Yeah, we're ready when you are.
Yep, I got the video up for Cassandra right now.
So this is how you met Arthur Schwartz.
So I met him through mutual friends, and I always had my free Assange bag or a free Julian shirt on. He knew my stance on WikiLeaks. He knew that this was the thing that was most important to me. We followed each other on Twitter for a long time. He knew all these things. But I was in a DM group with him, and Rick Renell was in it as well, and a lot of right-wing social influencers, right-wing journalists, people in the administration, in the campaign, we're all in this big DM group. I'm not anymore, but I was, and people would post links in there or ideas or things that were important to them, and so I had interviewed Julian Assange's mother, Christine, on October 30th of 2018. And I posted the link in there because I always posted WikiLeaks stuff in there, trying to hopefully, I was hoping somebody would see it and feel bad, or get it to somebody who could actually do something. And so just in a long shot, I threw it in there, didn't really think anything of it. And then 10 minutes later, Arthur called me and he went crazy, and he was saying that I need to stop trying. He was screaming at me and saying that they were going to go into the embassy, that they were going to get Julian, that they were going after Manning, that they weren't going after Julian for Vault 7 or for the DNC leaks, but that they were going to go after him for the Manning leaks. And he went into great specifics about people that he claimed Julian got killed or tortured. He claimed that there was, a child who got tortured in front of their father, that there were photos of it, and that people like Grinnell and John Jr. had previously supported WikiLeaks, but that they stopped supporting it because they saw these photos and that they heard these stories. But we know that that's not a thing, because during the Manning trial, the Pentagon testified that nobody was hurt, and during this most recent extradition trial, the government has testified that there's nobody that they know of that's been hurt. And so they were spreading this toxic information around, trying to poison the well. And I don't know if that includes to Trump or to John Jr. or if they're in on it or what, but they've been spreading this information. And so I went and I visited Julian on January 7th of 2019. And I remember because it's my boyfriend at the time's birthday, and Julian signed a book for him. But we talked about this in depth. And I remember being like, does Sheldon Adelson have problems with you? And he was like, no, why? Why would you bring that up? And I was like, because all these people have Sheldon Adelson in common, and this whole circle of people seem really upset with you. And he was like, I don't think so, I don't know. And we now know that Sheldon Adelson heard that whole phone call, or that whole discussion in person at the embassy. And I told him, obviously, that they were planning to go after him for the Manning leak, or that I was told that. And things just kind of snowballed from there. I ended up trying to visit him again in March, got locked in the room in the embassy, and then I called Arthur, or I texted Arthur 2 days later, and I was like, do you know anything about this? Why are they doing this to me? They've never done this to anyone who's visited Julian. And he said that he did know something about it, but that he couldn't tell me because he knew that I had told Julian. But I talked to Julian about this in person, which means that he heard the surveillance footage. And it's just been this big mess. Eventually,
that's within 2 days of you visiting Julian.
I feel longer.
No. So let me just say.
So I'm going to go ahead and cut it there. You can find that full video on our channel as well as Jason's channel, and I believe Jason was actually badass enough to put the closed captioning in.
I'm doing it. I still haven't put it in.
On it.
The closed captioning, I'm going to re-upload it this week.
Yeah, and so we were in a hotel bar directly after the Alex Jones event when that interview took place.
Super cool for her to sit down with you too. That's so, and go over everything. That's awesome.
Yeah, and to my knowledge, that's the only interview that she's really done on this topic, because she doesn't do many interviews at all. But I want to actually pull up the phone call now, unless anyone else has any commentary about that. Okay. Let me get this ready to share really fast.
Thumbs this video up, subscribe, and share to everything, guys.
Sandra,
hey,
you're posting classified information on Twitter. You can't do that.
What? I'm not posting classified information.
Yeah, Rick. Yeah, that's classified. Yeah, Rick's role is classified. You can't do that.
ABC News already reported it. That's where I saw it.
Yeah, but not his role. You are posting things that are classified that no one knows and has not been reported.
That was reported by ABC News.
I know what was reported. I see what you're tweeting. What you're tweeting is not what was reported. Someone's going to go to jail. You need to stop this.
Yeah, Julian's in jail right now because of this.
I don't want to go to jail.
Well, I mean, I'll delete my tweet only because you're saying that you'll get in trouble.
I don't want to go to jail. Please, I'm
I will delete it. I was just referring to the ABC News report.
Okay, but like they look into you, they see that we speak. Like that's bad.
I mean, the reason
He's taking orders from the president. Okay, so you're gonna punish me because he took orders from the president?
I wasn't punishing you. I was tweeting from an ABC News report.
Okay.
Remember, I called you about it.
I'm begging you, please.
All right, I will delete the tweets.
Thank you.
He was taking orders from the president.
Oh, and I think one of the other things that we should discuss, Andrew, from the interview that wasn't played is the fact that, not only is this the Grenell Trump operation, but kind of exclusively, I haven't seen it anywhere else. Cassandra Fairbanks said that, not only was Trump upset that Julian didn't take the deal that was offered by Dana Rohrabacher, but in order to use the Chelsea Manning WikiLeaks evidence and not the Vault 7 or the DNC links, she revealed that either Don himself or Don Jr. or both of them were shown pictures of children being tortured that they said were due to the Manning leaks. Can you hear me, Andrew? Nope. He's muted. All right.
I'm extra muted. Wow, I muted like 3 times. That's super disturbing to me too. The fact that there are circles within our government that don't even accept the information that the Pentagon put out, saying that no one was hurt in response to these leaks. That came out in a fucking court martial. It came out in Chelsea Manning's actual military court case that the Pentagon said no one was hurt as a result of these leaks. And so for there to still be disinformation and misinformation circling around the White House, right? Not even amongst the media or amongst those other things, but lies literally being told inside of the administration is really disturbing, because at the end of the day, there's a very small handful of people with the power to stop this. And if all of those people are literally just repeating the same smears that you see on mainstream media, it's no surprise that this came from the direction of the president, that he wanted Julian to be in this situation. And it actually harkens back to, we talked about it a little later, the whole Dana Rohrabacher Kim.com thing, where Kim.com revealed that he was the actual source that had connected Rohrabacher to be able to go talk to Julian through a back channel, for Julian to admit that it was Seth Rich that was the leaker and not Russia. And Julian, even though he had already done interviews on this and all these other things, literally said, I'm not here to do anybody favors. There's a First Amendment, there's a Constitution, and they can follow it. And for a man to be in that position, to, as we've talked about, 3,000 days in solitary confinement within the Ecuadorian Embassy, for him to take that position and say, no, like, not doing it, is fucking incredible. The power of, like, literally the spirit inside of that man is something that, like, I admire more than anything. So
same thing with Chelsea too. I mean, the fact that she's in this position where she could probably pretty easily get out of some of what she's going through, and she chooses not to based on principle, knowing what she's going to be facing. I mean, I can't even put to like words to how courageous that is. It's insane.
And let's not forget when it came out about the Rohrabacher stuff before the information on Grenell, and we just read the opening statements from this extradition hearing on behalf of Assange's attorneys, what was the media saying? Well, Assange was going to lie and say that Russia wasn't behind the leaks for Trump. He's a liar. It's more Russian propaganda. And again, the media has been saying what? The Seth Rich conspiracy theory has to end. And when we talk about those leaks from Kim.com, the direct messages, there's 2 things that should be pointed out. SR is in reference to Seth Rich. And not only does Assange say, hey, they already have all the information, meaning they know that this was a download, it wasn't a hack, that's not how it was leaked. But also, if they want to go through with this, the Republicans can suffer the same fate as the Democrats did in 2016. And I hope that's true. I hope people start looking at the OPCW leaks. I hope that Bernie Sanders, if he does get up there against Trump, he's not afraid to say there was no chemical attack in Duma in 2018. That's why WikiLeaks remains relevant. Even though this guy is literally behind a Pope-mobile glass wall at his own show trial, they're still doing more journalistic work than anybody at ABC, NBC, CBS, or Fox could ever dream of.
And that's why I don't understand why people don't get why WikiLeaks is such a crucial element to dealing with the situation we kind of find ourselves in. Like, we don't have a lot of journalism that's adversarial. We have state-run propaganda basically. And if we don't have somebody out there exposing the truth, we're in a lot of trouble. People need to recognize that this isn't just about one man. This isn't about just Julian. This is about, if we don't have a free press, things are going to get really bad really fast. That's like the last line of defense between us and just absolute madness.
Yep, and we should all be very aware that the Counterintelligence 2020 to 2022 report signed off by Trump is very specific. Leaktivists, hacktivists, public disclosure organizations. You are the new Iran, Hezbollah, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. So you have to beware. Guys, I'm going to bail. I know you guys have Commander X coming up. Before I go, I want to let everybody from my audience know about actionforassange.com and that you can follow this over at youtube.com/actionforassange, where this is simulcasting. I know you guys are going to have a new GoFundMe coming soon. Steve, is there anything else you want to close out with and let my audience know about before I bust out?
Absolutely. I have a show called Slow News Day, which you can find here on the YouTube if you type in Slow News Day podcast. I live stream every Sunday from 10 to noon Pacific, 1 to 3 Eastern. I'm incredibly proud of my guest list. But you can check out all of my videos there. I'm on Twitter at Slow News Day Show, and the overall goal for what we're trying to do with Action for Assange, aside from the very obvious saving Julian Assange's life and stopping the extradition, we're trying to move the conversation into a post-partisan world, a post-partisan reality, where we get the information that we need, because we still have organizations like WikiLeaks where we're allowed to look at primary source documents, digest it, and make our own freaking opinion. We don't get to have other conversations, especially political ones, if we don't have access to free and open information. So with that, Jason, take care, man. I will talk to you soon, I'm sure.
All right. Thank you guys so much. And I'll see you guys next week. Keep up the great work. That is Action for.
And right about now, we would like to introduce the one and only and legendary Commander X. Commander, sir, how are you this evening?
I'm good if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Well, then I'm doing great then. Hello, everybody. Hello to all my own followers who tuned in tonight. And I'm very happy to be here. Sorry I was late. I guess I missed all the fun. I missed the link.
Oh, it's just getting started, Commander X. Don't worry.
Oh, great. Well, good.
If you could, because we always have some new viewers in the audience, could you give everybody a little rundown of your backstory real quick and the unique and very, very special situation that you find yourself in right now?
Well, I guess that's easier to talk about. My current situation is kind of unique. I am the first hacktivist who did his work under the flag of Anonymous to receive political asylum. I have been granted political asylum here in Mexico, where I'm coming to you live by candlelight. I hope I look okay, but I think I look okay. But And I am also the first U.S. citizen in history to receive political asylum in the nation of Mexico as a consequence of that, although we didn't know that until actually after I had done it. But as a consequence of what I've done, I'm also the first U.S. citizen in history to claim political asylum in the nation of Mexico. And I guess from there, the backstory takes books and books to answer. How I got there was quite an adventure, a 10-year-long adventure. But that's where I sit right now. And part of my asylum claim was the fact that the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, one of the charges that Julian faces, is a patently political, like legally political charge on the face of it, always, almost always. I mean, certainly in the way that it is applied to anonymous and online protests, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act is patently and legally political, and that was part of the argument. The Mexican government obviously agreed with that, and I think that's a positive thing. And I think a lot of the first section of Julian's trial that we heard about was a lot of discussion about this idea of what is political, what is protest, what is activism, what is something that you do because you want to change governments. And as I said, in my case, the Mexican government agreed, and I think that bodes well. I think Mexican government, to begin with, has been very, very positive and very supportive in a very unique way of WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. If you are familiar with sort of current events, our president, we call him AMLO because his name is really long, so we call him AMLO. But a president here in Mexico recently issued quite a robust and supportive statement of Julian Assange and WikiLeaks in general, the mission of WikiLeaks. I think that from what I've seen anyway, as an outsider, obviously, but nevertheless living here, I've seen a great deal of grassroots support. We have a very robust coalition to liberate Julian that is very active in Mexico City. They've been picketing the embassy there and other targets. A very beautiful targets, actually. A few places there that are Mexico City. One of them is the the Monument de Revolución, or the Monument of Revolution, and it's just an incredible, breathtaking space to protest in. Mexico, of course, has a long history and in a very deep cultural, almost a religious way, regarding the ideas of revolution. So these things aren't surprising, but I think that I stand in a unique position to be able to point out, that other governments agree that these actions are political, and the argument is concrete, especially in a country like Mexico. Mexico, let's give you an example. Like, we've heard so much about the United States of America and how the United States of America is not in any way bound by the United Nations Human Rights Accord. They passed it in the Senate, but it was never signed. It was never passed in the Senate. I'm sorry, it was signed by the president, but it was never passed in the Senate. They're not bound by it. They're a nation amongst 4 or 5 or 6 in the world that are not bound by the United Nations Human Rights Accord. Amongst those nations are nations like North Korea and places like that. So the argument that I put in my petition, which I believe is the same argument that Julian's defense is putting forward, is that you can't do that. You cannot take a political prisoner and extradite them to a country that is bound by no international norms, none at all. The United Nations is not bound by the International Criminal Court. It's not by the International Court of Justice. It's not bound by the United Nations Human Rights Accord. It's in a league of countries, a very small group of countries that are very actually considered pretty bad countries, and countries that you never, ever, ever, ever consider even extraditing a person for nonviolent political offenses. And this was the argument, like I said, that I put forth to the Mexican government. They agreed instantly. It was literally within 10 minutes. They reviewed that petition and that argument and rubber stamped my refugee status in this country. So I think, there's just no argument that Julian's case is political. And I really feel for that reason that there's a great deal of confidence here. I'm actually fairly confident. I don't believe that there's any way the United Kingdom there can find any other way. And that would end on it. Apparently it does. Whether or not Julian's acts were political, then I believe that it's a slam. It's a slam. That doesn't mean we need to back off. It doesn't mean we don't need to pour into the streets by the tens of thousands. We do. We need to keep the pressure up. We need to give them every reason to do the right thing, and I've been consistent in that strategy. But I think that there's no doubt that that this is a political case, and I think that Julian's going to win this.
Well, here's the argument by the prosecution. The argument by the prosecution is that it's all cyber crimes and cyber terror, and the crux of their argument is going to be centered around making it anything but even acknowledging that it's political. I agree with you 100%. The reason he was granted asylum in the Ecuadorian Embassy was because he was being politically persecuted by the United States government. It's not like there isn't a precedent here. But the case itself is going to hint, that's really the two sides, that's their arguments right now. Julian's team is going to make every effort to show that it is political, that all semblance of civil or human rights were violated. And the prosecution is going to argue that he's a bad computer guy.
Well, and I guess my point is this is not a unique argument on the part of the U.S. government. This is the argument they're making in my case. This is the argument they made in the case of Lori Love, who, a dear friend, by the way, shout out if Lori happens to be listening tonight. Shout out to you, Lori. I know he's a real continuous presence there in London for Julian. And so, I think that it's a slam dunk in the sense that there's no argument. There are tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions. I don't even know. I don't know the numbers. Ask UTPJ or them folks that monitor that kind of shit. But I think there's just shit tons of people, and you could just put the media alone of those protests in as evidence. They're not protesting religion or science. They're protesting politics. They're protesting a political prisoner. So, the people alone around the world are providing evidence to advocate that this is, it's a ridiculous argument anyway. It's like trying to argue that the sky is not blue on a sunny day or whatever. It's really just stupid. And I think it's a slam dunk. I think that for that reason, it's obvious that what Julian has done, he's done for political reasons. The politics, though, have been rather overarching. I think Julian has done what he's done because he feels that people have a right to know. And somewhere along the line, in an interesting turn of history, that became controversial. It became controversial that you got to know what your government is doing in your name secretly. And but I think that's why Julian did what he did, and that's the politics. It's the politics of information activism. It's the politics of using information to alter the world around you, socially, politically, economically, and whether that's protest online or transparency or the leaking of, wrongdoing on the part of corporations and governments. This is all part of an ideal, which is that information should be free. Information should flow freely. That an informed society will be the best behaving society.
So I have a question, Commander X, because
that's political.
you have a
please.
long history of being at the front lines of what I consider pushing the boundaries of what digital protests are allowed to be, through your like DDoSs on public things, and I don't think that is acceptable. I don't want to say that it is or isn't a good thing, but I do have a question. When you did stage your protest, was there any pre-existing permits that you had tried to file with the cities to be able to do it? Or if you could even answer that question, because it's something that I've seen other countries around the world.
If it had gone to court, I would have argued a line of defense that has been actually quite successfully argued often in California courts, especially even in federal district court. There have been some surprising cases of this, but I would have argued the necessity defense. People were dying. These laws that were being enacted by this county to try to gentrify this small beach town were in fact genocidal almost in their effect on a huge demographic of extremely vulnerable population, people in our population. And that protest, if you read my books, had been going on for months and months and months. And I had been continuously arrested for the crime of sleeping on the courthouse steps, which became a whole other drama, a whole part of that drama. But
so one of the things that
the situation was, and so when we took down the county website on a Sunday at noon for 30 minutes exactly, as a way to punch them in the nose, the one or two people we may have inconvenienced in that action were far less inconvenienced than they would have been if we had chained ourselves to the doors, because we were sleeping there at the county courthouse every night. We could have done that. We could have just right there. I mean, we were living there. We had tents set up. So we could have chained ourselves to the doors. How much more damage would that have caused? They would have come down and had to cut us off, and we would have spent the weekend in jail. Instead, I faced 12 years in prison for a 30-minute digital sit-in that had almost no effect other than publicity. It was that, which is why it was done. So that would have been the argument that I would have used in my case. It would have been the necessity argument. People were dying. They had a law, my friend, that was a misdemeanor crime, an arrestable crime, to cover yourself with a blanket during certain hours of the night, because homeless people were beating the tickets. They were beating the tickets by saying I wasn't asleep. So the city council said, we're going to fucking cover that. If you're even covered up with something at certain hours of the night, asleep or awake, we got you. That's how stupid and how, I mean, people could die from that. An old person, and people were dying from it. They were giving a ceremony once a year where they would read all the homeless people's names that died in Santa Cruz. This is a beach town of 50,000. It would take them hours to read the names of the people that died in that city every year. So my argument would have been the same argument that the nuns who won when they went and put paint on the MX missiles, the nuclear missiles in South LA out in the test flats, and they climbed up and they vandalized those missiles. They won the case because they argued the necessity of defense. The protest was necessary no matter how disruptive.
So I want to be really clear, because this is kind of like a fine line in U.S. law right now. I am not advocating for distributed denial of service attacks, or anything digitally related at all. at least right now. What I plan on doing is trying to work with the local DC police, the Metro PD, to see if there is a way that we can very specifically and targetedly perform cyber protests, because I do believe that it is protected under the Constitution personally, even if it's not in law right now. So that's something I'd like to kind of talk to you about later on, if we could.
I'm not
Once,
advocating this, and Julian, you asked me about my own backstory.
no, absolutely.
that's
And
my
what I'm
backstory.
saying is I'm trying to
Yeah.
organize an event like that for the second round of the extradition hearings, but I want it to be in a permitted, controlled, allowed by the state way, I guess.
Then what you do is you do the same thing that every politician this campaign is so hysterical that the reaction that people have to DDoS. You go on and you find their telephone number instead, because that's perfectly legal. Obama, me, you, anybody right now can go on television and we can give somebody's 800 number right now on this show, and we could say, hey, everybody, call this Biden 800 number and send the message, shut them down, send that message to them. We can do that, and that's perfectly legal. What I did was I went online and said the same thing, except I said a website instead of a phone number. It's fucking ridiculous, okay? So I don't even want to get into it. I don't advocate it in Julian's cause. I think that Anonymous, which is who I'm here to represent, to be honest with you, that's the part of information activism I represent. I think we've been clear that we really don't give a rat's ass about the laws, so we'll do what we have to do. And I think that will kick in the very, very unfortunate and extremely unlikely event that they actually extradite Julian to the U.S. I think then Anonymous would have a role to play, a very transgressive role, a role very similar to the role that we played in the Arab Spring and all over the world. I think we've proven how powerful as a collective we can be when we come together and we're very, very angry. And I think that at this point, Anonymous is sort of just sitting this one out on the sideline. So I don't recommend anything more robust than emailing your local congressman. I think
there's actually a really cool tool. There's a tool on Twitter. It's called ResistBot, and it's a step better than emails because it sends faxes. It's a 100% legal tool. Everything's built in on their end. You tell them your zip code or address. They match you up to your representatives, and then you can type a fax out to them. They can do it at the state and local level as well as the federal level for representatives, people in administrations. I think it goes as far as to have judge and justices. And again, that's called ResistBot. I think that would be a really powerful tool that people can use legally right now to inform the representatives in our Congress on Julian's case. Because part of the public information campaign that we're doing is, and it may be a bit naive, but
I can speak from my own experience. December 5th, I was granted political asylum, and everybody who was a part of that online, my own personal campaign, realizes that what won the day really was the email campaign. When we started emailing all of these political leaders here in Mexico and letting them know that Commander X was here in the country and that what they expected from the Mexican government to treat, how they expected them to treat me, immediately the way that I was treated and the tenor of the Mexican government and everything immediately changed. So this works, folks. What he's talking about, the ideas of legally petitioning these folks, these kinds of efforts have an impact. If for no other reason, it floods their inboxes, with the message, and they can't ignore it. They have to get a report that says, hey, you got 5,000 messages that said, hey, we want Julian free. So, this is impactful work. But I stand by what I said, May 18th. I know those are the real plans for the really big rallies, but you can get out there before then. And I can't recommend enough that it's time to push the boundaries. It's time to occupy shit. It's time for you to go to the embassy and set up a tent city, not leave until Julian's free. We're that close to the end of this thing. It's spring in most places in the world. where we would want people to protest, really. So get out there and get in the streets. I think this is going to be one in the streets. I think that's where the real pressure is going to be. But all of that cyber stuff, especially email campaigns, petitions, all of that is very impactful. From my perspective, my own personal experience, it made the difference. So do it all. Twitter cannot be underestimated. I was able to reach these politicians here in Mexico via Twitter directly, communicate with them, and have thousands of my supporters do the same. Reach out to them through Twitter storms, and really that was super impactful in my case and how I was treated there. So
one of the things that we actually look really forward to in DC, just to kind of toss a few of the things that we're going to be doing out there. We're going to do some, for the opening day, I guess, Guantanamo Bay protests. And what we're going to do, and hopefully we'll be able to get different group leaders involved with this to be the people, but we're going to get people in locations all across DC legally permitted to block intersections, so the police cars are surrounding them in orange jumpsuits with blindfolds on, hands chained behind their back with shackles on their knees, to create a spectacle event inside of the heart of the mainstream media locations, and to use the system itself, the permitting process that allows the police to shut the city down for you, as a way to create a larger scene where these cops are in their vehicles directly around people in the Guantanamo Bay uniforms kneeling down, as a way to reach the mainstream media and create a larger impact. So that's one of the events that we're looking forward to. And then the other one, this is something that's going to be a lot harder to plan, and it's going to take literally across the board kind of coordination between 2 or 3 different states and multiple jurisdictions. And we insult parades constantly, but the largest parade in the world, the longest parade, was about 7 point some miles. Chelsea Manning's prison to the White House is 9.3. So what we're going to try to do is get 10 to 12 to 15 different groups to join us in a march, whether they're stepping in at a mile and then stepping out or what have you, to march from Chelsea Manning's prison to the White House and get it set in the book of world records that the largest parade in the world was in support, the longest parade in the world was in support of Chelsea Manning, and Jeremy Hammond for that matter. So that's something that we're also really looking forward to, on top of all of the other events that we'll have going on at that time.
Well, and I also think that, wasn't it John McDonnell recently just went to visit Julian, and he said something in a video the other day that I saw about how what this case needs is noise. Like, we need to make noise. And so I think that the more we do, and I mean, being able to get in the Guinness Book of World Records is dope. I mean, that's gonna there's no way they can ignore that at that point. So I mean, that's really all it takes, is just noise. Like, if we just keep at it and keep talking about it and keep doing events and protests and marches and letter writing campaigns, and I try to make at least 3 political phone calls Monday through Friday, and most of them are about Julian Assange. But I mean, if everybody just did like whatever you can do, as long as we're all making noise, I mean, at some point they have to listen.
Well, I think that's it. And I've said along consistently, I think this will be a successful effort. And there's huge benefit in this from a personal perspective. This is a chance, as I've said, to write your name into a story that I think when we look back on it, 10, 20, 50 years from now, this will be a very pivotal moment in a defining moment in this, what is really a great culture war and the direction of humanity. So I've been throughout my life involved in activism, and I've been there a couple of times during moments like that. And I can tell you that it is just the most incredible, rewarding feeling you can ever have. It is visceral. It is real. You will be a part of history. So, and then, yeah, I think anything transgressive, I'm not going to judge. I don't, people know me, know that I'm very, very much non-judgmental when it comes to talking about tactics and protest. I think do whatever your heart feels at this point. I really think it's that important. I can't imagine anybody doing anything right now anyway that I would disapprove of. So I think we should get out there. I really like the idea of occupying space. I guess I'm an old OWSer and I always will be, right? I just really feel that tactic is, for whatever flipping reason that I'll never understand, really pisses them off. So
it pisses them off because it shows them
putting up a dome tent with Free Julian on the side of it pisses off the cops. And if it's that easy, then that's what you do. I mean, go ahead and do it. You're not going to get any criticism from me.
Yeah, no, the dissident is in their face when it's just us, on YouTube or on Twitter or what have you. It's not as in their face and they can choose to ignore it. But when you put it directly in front of them and they're forced to look at you, that's when they go nuts because they know what they're doing is just fucking evil. And
it comes down to where I was with that other fellow at the very, very beginning. It's the fucking necessity defense. And guess what? Even the most corrupt justice system in the world, the U.S. justice system, has accepted on a number of very significant occasions, has accepted the necessity defense in some of the most extreme transgressive protests ever done in the United States of America. And that defense has been accepted. So you know what? If there was ever a necessity defense for almost anything, you know what? Who is it? I wish I knew his name. Somebody will help me here in the show and remind me. But he's got the dreads and he's always at the friggin' consulate. He's always at the embassy all the time. And he was still in the embassy. Crazy nutball of a protester, old guy with the dreads. He had gone out there and he was originally arrested for locking down a B-52 bomber. He went and disabled a B-52 bomber and went to prison for it. The dudes, then again, you do what you got to do, man. If they're gonna try to hurt Julian, then we need to do whatever it takes to raise awareness and to stop them from that. And I think that at this point, I would just be highly suspect. I would be highly reluctant for anybody to start becoming judgmental or laying down any kind of guidelines to say, well, this is acceptable form of protest and this isn't. Because this is the necessity defense. So hang banners, do banner drops. If lockdowns appeal to you, remember that there's a very, very safe way to do lockdowns. One of the things that I did that I was famous for during Occupy was I went around and gave seminars on the safe way to do lockdowns. And there's an actual whole procedure where you can do it and try to ensure the safety of the activists and the people involved. And so, but, I think that I'm not going to judge anybody. I think we should just get out there and do whatever comes to our heart. I think a lot of people are going to like the idea of occupying space and also protesting in front of these UK embassies. Remember that this is a UK issue. We need to keep the focus, at least right now, primarily on the UK. I think asking for any kind of policy change out of the United States of America is ludicrous. They're in such chaos right now. They're basically like an Uberist. They're like a snake eating its tail, So I think that we need to keep the focus on the UK, and we need to have the UK prevent this at its source. We need to end this at its source, and he needs to be freed in the UK. I think they want to bring him to Sweden. I think that's a great idea. He should go there immediately with medical care, and then from there we'll just see where it goes. But I'd be happy with that outcome, and I think that's the outcome we need to stay focused on. And those UK embassies, that's a real pain in their ass if you get all up in those UK embassies. We saw it here in Mexico City. was interesting. Let me tell you about the Mexico City UK Embassy, Julian Assange, the May 24, what was it, the March, the one that just happened, right, guys, the 24th or whatever it was, the one that just came about. But the Mexican police, the Mexican city police and the federal police, and then the brand new, spanking new National Guard that AMLO has incorporated, they all came out, right, probably hundreds of them, and they put up tens of thousands of US dollars, hundreds of thousands of pesos worth of metal fencing and everything. 25 intrepid people showed up. And these guys sat there in the blazing sun all day watching these people laugh at them and film them from the other side. That's how much money and time and effort they put out, thinking that the embassy was going to get fucking stormed. And it was just 25 really cool college kids hanging out, with a bullhorn and having fun. So that's how you do it, man. That's how you do it, because that costs money, man. That costs the Mexican government money. It costs the British government. Probably had to hire some extra people on the inside of the embassy because, again, they thought they were going to get stormed. And, so every protest counts, whether it's huge or whether it's not. Go to those embassies, because I really feel that that's a pressure point. We have won so many battles in anonymous, both online and off, by paying attention to those consulates. They're very pricey to protect, and kind of disturbance that you can raise in front of consulates is something that gets heard, it gets noticed by leaders, and it gets the job done. So I don't know. That's what I got, guys. I mean, I don't have a lot of specifics. You guys, I would look to the organizations that put this show on and to Unity for Jay for more specifics, for detailed campaigns and things to get involved in. Just everybody do it. Just everybody find a place to grab on, something that you feel comfortable that you can accomplish, and get in there. But I think it's an all hands on deck kind of moment. And so let's get out there, and it's fun. It's fun making history. It's fun to beat down power. And one of the things, people that know me know my history. I've been in a couple movies already where there's quite a bit of glory, man. There's quite a good feeling, man, to take empire and slam its face into the mud. And if we free Julian, that's what we've done, man. That's what we've done. We've said no, you thus far and no further. And so
well, and even Julian himself says, "I enjoy crushing bastards."
Yeah,
that's a Julian Assange quote. I enjoy I think it's like, I enjoy helping vulnerable people, and I enjoy crushing bastards. And that's
speaking of bastards. I actually want to pull up a clip here, because I would really like your opinion on all this. ABC Australia, to their credit, actually ran this piece where they released some of the leaked footage. Let me find my desktop here the right way. From inside of the embassy. So I want to play this a little bit just so everyone can see and hear it.
It's just after 7 o'clock on a January evening 2 years ago, and barrister Jeffrey Robertson is visiting his client, Julian Assange.
Can I get you something, a tea or coffee?
Mr. Robertson was providing advice to Assange in relation to his US espionage charges. The meeting was legally privileged, and we shouldn't be able to hear it or see it.
It's a serious crime in European law. It's invasion of privacy. It's breach of confidential relationship between a lawyer and his client.
Despite that, the cameras kept running. They were controlled by staff from Spanish security company UC Global. A group of employees from the company eventually blew the whistle on the spying.
They made statements and provided a large volume of material linked to what amounted to espionage by the company by means of cameras and hidden microphones inside the embassy, information which was shared with third parties in the US.
Mr. Martinez was also one of the lawyers spied on. He pieced together evidence revealing UC Global's owner, former Spanish Navy Marine David Morales, ran a comprehensive surveillance operation on Assange and his guests between 2015 and 2018, allegedly on behalf of Washington.
Mr. Morales openly told his employees that he was collaborating with US intelligence services.
Assange and his guests were repeatedly promised the embassy's CCTV system was not being shared and no audio was being recorded. That was a lie. UC Global hid a bug in the base of this meeting room fire extinguisher, and another in a female bathroom where Assange and his lawyers met to avoid surveillance. Mr. Morales has denied installing listening devices in the embassy, telling Spanish media WikiLeaks must have placed them.
It is incredibly troubling that our secret and privileged legal conversations with Julian Assange were recorded and apparently handed to the US authorities. This is one of the most fundamental principles of protecting attorney-client relationships, that we are able to have confidential and private meetings to discuss legal strategy.
Jennifer Robinson and another Australian lawyer, Melinda Taylor, were also spied on. This is a UC Global report summarising everyone who visited Assange in March 2018. Melinda Taylor's name can be seen in an entry for March 6. And this email from Mr. Morales in September 2017 asks staff to focus on a group of Assange's visitors, including Jennifer Robinson.
The spying that was undertaken of our legal meetings in the embassy with Julian Assange would have been incredibly useful to the United States in giving them advance notice of our very sensitive legal conversations about protecting Julian from US extradition.
What we need to really drive home to governments is the importance of that privacy in between that Australian citizen and their lawyer, because it goes to the heart of the justice system. If you don't have that protection, you can't have proper advice.
The US Justice Department and the CIA declined to respond. Dylan Welch, ABC News.
So I was just wondering, Commander X, what's your take on all of that?
Well, I think that this is par for the course. This is the war that we have been in for quite some time now. This is what they do. This is what they have always done. This is what cyberpunks have been telling people they were doing since the 80s and only since Snowden and the revelations that WikiLeaks have done, especially the CIA vaults. I think that for me as a technologist, the most revealing stuff to ever come out were the CIA vaults by WikiLeaks. So courageously done too at the very end where things were already going south. What do I think? I think there's two principles involved here that are very critical that we have to fight for. It's one of the reasons that I personally have stood up in my own case so strongly. And that is the principle, first of all, that they can't spy on us like this. This is just fucking wrong. This is so fundamentally wrong that it's unquestionably wrong. And another thing that's unquestionably wrong is that Julian Assange was not just an Australian citizen, he was an Ecuadorian citizen. And he had full and complete asylum given to him by an act of state. And in Mexico,
and he was sold.
When they finished giving me asylum in Mexico, it took them all of 10 minutes. They gave me a paper that we both signed, me and the government officer both signed it. I have a copy of it right in my desk drawer below this camera right now. And it stated in no uncertain terms could I never be refiled to the United States of America because my claim had been accepted. And that is a principle. Without it, the whole political asylum process is a sham. And without the privacy to not be spied upon, then the entire legal process is likewise a sham. And so both of these principles are key principles that we're fighting for in the Assange fight. We need, without political asylum, Latin America would have collapsed a long time ago. It's one of the reasons why it is so strictly enshrined in Latin American law because it was such a critical part of bringing down the right-wing regimes that the United States had propped up, was the idea that people could go into embassies, diplomatic asylum even. It's the only place in the world where diplomatic asylum, going into an embassy and getting political asylum, is enshrined as a codified part of law. So we need to fight for that. We need to fight for those principles, and we can't allow this to become the norm that these principles no longer apply, because they are all we have. They are all we have when you are like me or like Julian, when you are a single citizen, a single individual, and you are faced with this behemoth of a state, this huge fucking empire, the United States of America, more resources than all the countries on the planet put together that they can bring to bear against you. Then these principles of political asylum, diplomatic asylum, these are not games anymore. These are not just paper ploys. These are all a citizen has.
Well, the entire case surrounding Julian, it's built on the breakdown of the rule of law. Like we're watching the complete and total erosion of rule of law unfold in a slow enough way to where people can get distracted and stop thinking about it. And we've got a fucking election that is being blatantly and openly rigged, just like it was last time. And the reason people knew it was rigged was because of WikiLeaks.
Well, that's part of it. That's what the establishment doesn't want. That you need to understand, and that's become clear in the American politics. The only comment I'll make on the American election in a show like this, in a context like this, is to just point out that clearly, there are establishment forces at play who do not want you to understand how this process works. They don't want you to understand that the emperor has no clothes. And they are so vested in that they will do crazy stuff, like put a dude that has a piece of his brain cut out and make him run for president and make you believe that that's the best thing that money can buy. And they'll do literally anything to preserve power. This has always been the case. This is from the very fundamentally what anonymous and what hacktivism is really all about, is standing up against exactly that. But these are, but the thing is though that they don't always win. One of the things that I've been clear about throughout my entire career as a hacktivist is these guys are not the eye of fucking Sauron. You can beat these people. Julian put out a wonderful book. Fuck, if I can remember the name of it, but I'll try. But there's a book, one of Julian's books. Look it up, man. It's the best book ever. And it talks a lot about the hope of technology and about the hope of mathematics and about the hope of encryption and about how you can take back cypherpunk, and you can take back the power, man. We have the ability to win this. And time again, groups like Anonymous in the last 10 years have won titanic battles against enormous odds, both online and in the street, and effected the kind of change that needed to be effected. So we can win this. If we all come together, if we all set aside our differences, put together all the strategies that you can. I think most importantly right now, get in the streets. I really feel that's important. If you can all do it, do it. I really feel it's the most important thing that you can do. If you need to simplify it, you say, look, X, I lead a complex life, I work hard, tell me one simple fucking thing I can do. Well, you got a sleeping bag and you got a little tent, and then do it. You know, you can still go to work. You know, go to work from your little tent out in front of the UK Embassy.
Or even just make phone calls. Make phone calls, send emails.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
everybody can do that. Anybody can do that. Anybody.
All of that sort of stuff, you know. But I think that, you know, if we just all do everything right now, I think that we'll make enough noise. We're making a lot of noise as it is. We're just this week, we see now finally we made a few breaks into the mainstream media news cycles, which, is undeniably important. I wish we could just say fuck MSM. I do say fuck MSM, but still, when we can break into that cycle, it's important recognition. It's important to get it out there to people that otherwise maybe don't recognize that there's an immediate problem.
I think that's one of the biggest fights that we have is combating the narrative control that mainstream media has. People are so misinformed, and that's going to be a huge part of this battle, is making sure that people have accurate information and they actually know what's going on and not just what's being force fed to them on CNN every day.
And I want to leave people with a positive. There's such a dire situation from the very beginning. I can remember the very first ever vigil that Susie did, and I remember how dire we felt. I remember I had Susie on my show. I had a radio show at the time that during that same 24-hour period, I had Elizabeth's boss on, and it was an all hands on deck moment. And I remember how gloomy and how horrible it felt. And it was just really because of the internet cut off, right? That's when it all began. And I really want to leave people with a positive note, not a note where you can, let go and slack because we got this, because we don't. But I really want to leave people on a positive note. I think on the legal front, the attorneys this week, what I saw, and I've watched a number of these cases. Lori Love wasn't just a fellow activist; he's a dear friend, and I was very personally vested in that case. I watched every second of that case. So I really think that I'm getting good at watching these cases, and I really feel that the legal team did a fantastic job this week. They're really knocking it, and the UK is losing the image battle. That wonderful picture, God bless whoever had the courage to sneak the photo out of Julian in the glass cage. That really, I think, was the icing on the cake. That really made real what everybody was complaining about all week long, that stupid doc. So,
and if I could real quick, I want to summarize what happened between Monday and Tuesday night, or Monday night and Tuesday morning. After the first round of the extradition hearing, on the first day of the extradition hearing, Julian Assange was strip searched twice. He was handcuffed 11 times. He was moved into five or six different holding cells and had his personal cell searched at least 2 times, all to be put back into.
I really want to say something on this. Oh God, I did 5 years in prison, much of it in federal custody. Okay, first of all, fuck. Okay, I really feel for Julian, and I get where you're going on this, and you can finish the list in a second, and I can add some more. This is how it goes for all of us, man. Every time. It is always fucking like this, dude. And I'm telling you, it gets worse. They will keep you in those manacles for 14 fucking hours. They will refuse to feed you for days at a time just because they don't want you to have that shit. You have no idea the torture that they can bring to bear on you. And all of it is legal, all of it is the rules, and all of it is happening every day. It's happening right now to Jeremy Hammond. I guarantee you he spends 90% of his fucking time locked up in the chute, locked up in the damn solitary confinement. Chelsea, maybe, I don't know. I don't know what her conditions are, but I can tell you that Jeremy definitely. Martin Godsfeld, who revealed information about brutal abuse of children at Boston Children's Hospital, has been in a special weird ass fucking prison in Indiana that they have that I didn't even know existed. None of us knew this place existed until they sent Marty there. That they specifically have just to send famous people so they can make them not be able to exert their fame or exert their influence, whatever. It's a communications control unit. It's fucking crazy, man. If this concerns you about Julian, then that's great. I applaud you. But the reason I am so upset about this is happening to all of them. Okay? This is what they do. It's torturous in the West. It is prison conditions that are unfit and do not even come close to meeting international standards. Belmarsh is no different than any of the federal holding facilities in the United States of America. They are fundamentally unfit. They are torturous, cruel, and inhuman, and countries around the world are beginning to find that. In Northern Europe, several countries have found that, and obviously Mexico agrees with my own assessment of the U.S. federal system. But I just want to say that if this appalls you, if this treatment appalls you, then understand that this is the same shit Jeremy Hammond goes through every time they haul his ass out of solitary confinement and bring him down to that fucking grand jury and make him say, no, I'm not going to testify against WikiLeaks again this week. They strip search him 11, 10, 15 fucking times, however many times they want. They make him eat his lunch out of a little box that's fucking big, and they keep him in manacles for 20 fucking hours just because they can. Just because they fucking can. Okay?
And a large reason, just to pivot this back to a foundational issue, and I really appreciate you going into that, Commander X. But the 13th Amendment, I know a lot of people know what it is, but I just want to read it here. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime whereof the party shall be duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or places subject to their jurisdiction. So I just want to point out, to bring this back to a post-ideological standpoint, the reason things like this, or part of the reason things like this are allowed to happen, is because we still have legal slavery in our country. And it's something that gets...
The reason stuff like this is allowed to happen is the fundamental argument that the prosecutor put forth himself in the fucking trial. And this is what it is. He said, and I state, because we are a liberal democracy, we are absolved from the secular judgment of other liberal democracies on these fucking issues. In other words, tough fucking shit. We can house our prisoners any way we want. We can run our justice system as corrupt as we fucking want, because in this day and age of liberal fucking democracy, another liberal democracy doesn't get a right to say shit. And
well, just look at what's happening at the prisons in Alabama.
Exactly. Well, it's horror. It's a horror show. Prison advocacy has come such a long way since the internet. When I was in, there was no such thing as the internet. We had the mailing list and people writing, and it's awesome. We had families against mandatory minimums, which were huge back then because the mandatory minimums were a big, big crushing weight on so many people's shoulders. But I have been in federal custody, and this is the key question at hand, because that's what Julian is facing. And I can tell you that federal custody is specifically cruel, inhuman, torturous, and degrading, and it is designed to be that way. It is designed to be as torturous and dehumanizing and as degrading as possible, because they are the ultimate jurisdiction. Nobody can fucking gainsay them. So even state prisons, you would come out of federal. I remember coming out of federal custody. This is how bad it is. This is no word of a lie. Here's the story. I came out of federal custody one time into state custody, and the local sheriff, he knew me because I'd been in his custody a bunch of times, and he had to pick me up from the feds at the airport, man. Honest to God, the man took the handcuffs off me on the tarmac and wrapped a blanket around me. I looked that fucking bad. And drove me to the jail, which he had to do. But, I mean, that's how bad it was that fucking local pigs were worried about me, man. I was so rough when I came off that airplane from U.S. federal custody. It is designed to grind you to dust. It's amazing to me that the Saudi Arabian justice system has a 99% conviction rate, as does the Chinese justice system. And we hear so much in the world about how horribly corrupt those justice systems are, how no trial could ever possibly be. The United States justice system has a 97% conviction rate. Okay, so folks, we're talking the U.S. justice system is 2% less corrupt than Saudi Arabia and China. Because any lawyer, any legal scholar will tell you that in a truly adversarial justice system, a 97% conviction rate is fucking impossible. It's literally impossible. It's something like
you could have actual kangaroos in suits and wigs holding a gavel, and it would be more fair and more impartial and much more realistic of approaching some system of justice. The espionage court has 100% conviction rate, the one that Julian would be going to.
And espionage, as it was proven in court, is a fundamentally political charge. It has always been accepted that it is a fundamentally political charge. Now, if you get caught within the United States doing espionage, you're probably screwed. I mean, you can argue politics all you want, but they got you. But this is a foreign publisher who's a foreign citizen who is publishing from foreign soil. I'm sorry, but you just don't get to do that. I mean, it's just not. I think the judge is going to see that is fundamentally unacceptable. I think that's what the finding will be. I really feel that's the way it's going to be. But know in your heart that this doesn't end with Julian. If you're concerned about this kind of treatment, you need to know that Anonymous in particular has been fighting these cases with like Jeremy Hammond. I mean, Jeremy Hammond only recently became involved in the WikiLeaks case. We've been fighting for Jeremy now for 10 fucking years. So don't tell me about Jeremy Hammond and WikiLeaks. And the conditions that Jeremy is under, if you follow the Free Jeremy Twitter account, there's a daily account of Jeremy going in and out of the shoe, getting his cell daily trashed just because for political reasons that they'll go in for 3 or 4 days in a row and turn his cell upside down, which is that's your life, man. That's your home. And it's just the amazing amount of inhumane treatment, torturous treatment, lack of food, lack of proper health care. The list goes on and on, So I don't think I've ever had proper health care in federal custody, ever. I don't think I've even
on
seen
Wednesday
a doctor.
On Wednesday last week, we went out to Chelsea and Jeremy's prison, actually, in Virginia. And our rally there, we read the speech or the letter that Chelsea sent to her judge, the letter that Jeremy sent to his judge about their grand juries. But the other thing that we did, because we wanted to make sure that they knew that people were out there, was the way the prison's set up. The complex itself is right here, and it's set back in the middle of the city, literally. And then there's an overpass or an entry ramp onto an overpass that runs right here. So we pulled 25 to 30 people after all of our events and after reading these statements underneath that overpass. And we each had our whistles because we figured we're going to fill this whole parking lot with whistleblowers. And so we were all under there and just blasted our whistles for a good 3.5, 4 minutes. And it was deafening.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Noise demonstrations are incredibly effective.
And
noise demonstrations are always effective. So.
And I found
love the whistle idea.
I found out afterwards, actually, that Jeremy Hammond, once we had left, actually got moved from general back into solitary confinement as we were wrapping up our protests.
Oh, of course. That's,
So
that's
I just really
given.
hope, I'm sorry to keep cutting you off, but real quick, I just really hope that we were able to have Jeremy and Chelsea hear us, because I want them to know that there were 30 whistleblowers in that parking lot that were standing up for them, that were trying to tell the people guarding them and everyone watching at home that this is fucking wrong.
Jeremy's sentence is already up. Jeremy should be free right now, and that's the fact of the matter is he did his time for the Stratford hack. A hack, by the way, which revealed things. Again, it goes back to what vindicates transgressive action. I love what Barrett Brown had to say in the We Are Legion movie. He said, there are some things that just will never be revealed any other way. There are some things in this world that will never see the light of day from either A, a whistleblower, or B, will never see the light of day from some sort of investigation, congressional oversight, or any kind of journalistic investigation. There are some things that will never see the light of day unless a brave and courageous hacktivist goes in there and says, you know what, I'm taking your information and I'm going to spray it all over the world. It's time for the world to take a look at what you've been doing and judge for itself. And that was the Stratford hack. And that, that hack, those files are still available on WikiLeaks to this day. You can still go, they're called the intelligence files, and you can go still see what Jeremy liberated. So, anybody can argue about why Jeremy's in there, but Jeremy deserved a medal for liberating those files. And instead, he did 10 years flat in federal custody, which is, you know what? I did a nickel. I don't think I could survive 10 years flat. Honest to God, that's a fucking hero and a half. That's a man who has lived to see himself become a living legend. So, Jeremy we'll get him out. We'll get him out somehow by hook or by crook. But don't forget that these conditions go on and on and on. Every single federal prisoner, whether he's a political prisoner, I mean, there are tons of Native American political prisoners who are in right now. I mean, there's these conditions in Western prisons and the justice system in the West, in the UK, Canada, and USA especially. The Five Eyes nations, really, we need to take a long, hard look about these countries who, really are supposed to be the bastions of freedom in the world, but really have become these huge, huge tyrannies, just chewing up the rights of dissent, of any kind of transparency, of any kind of, I mean, they basically essentially want complete control. I mean, I just don't know any other way to describe it. They want complete control of everything, all information.
To the point to where you're being steered to what you buy. I don't know if you read it or not, X, but if you have, you need to check out the book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. I like it. It is a hell of a read. And it won't blow your mind because you're you and you're where you're at, but it'll open your eyes to just a little bit more depraved. It's like peeling the onion. When you think you're gone, there's another layer of depravity behind that with these fucking guys. Like, it's just it seems to be never ending. And you're right, the only way to get through to anyone is to make enough noise to generate a response. And that's what we tried to do all week in DC. We were approached by a reporter from one of those outlets.
We live in a different world. We're going to win these battles, guys. More and more, you're going to see people come together around these huge issues like the Free Assange issue, and you're going to see more and more victories. And it's a simple matter of we're winning because the technology enables the power of the people on a level that we never had. I mean, I have been organizing and been in activism now for 4 decades. And back before we had even pagers or even cell phones or big giant Motorola brick cell phones. I mean, we had nothing, man. We had fucking nothing. We had fax machines and mimeograph machines and God knows, wheat paste and all that fucking horse shit that we had to go through to put 10,000 people in the streets. And now, you can hit a mailing list or hit a Twitter timeline with a few tweets and you've got tens of thousands of people in the streets. The power that this technology gives us is so much greater than the power that they can exert using it against us. Yes, it is a double-edged sword, but their edge is so much more blunter than ours, trust me. I mean, it was much more advantage than it does their advantage. And the proof is that we have been seeing, in apartheid, one of the first causes that I ever got involved in as a teenager was the anti-apartheid movement in America, the divestment movement specifically, getting people to divest from South African stocks. And it took like fucking 10 years and this atrocious thing called apartheid in South Africa, and to free this political prisoner who ended up becoming president of South Africa. It took 10 years. It took 10 days for Anonymous to run the dictator out of Tunisia, guy. I was there. I did that. I helped do that shit. Right? 10 fucking days we ran one of the most transient dictators in the Middle East out. 18 days to get Mubarak out. He signed the Camp fucking David peace accord. And we ran him out like a donkey. in 18 days. That's revolution. That's the advancement of the technology, the increased power that the people can apply now to these situations is going to mean that we're going to begin winning them pretty much at will until we eventually take away, the power from this empire, which I think we eventually got to face. I mean, after Julian, one of the big questions we got to face is, do we even want to allow an empire like that to continue to exist? I mean, if it's going to behave that way in the world, then we all are in danger, and maybe we just want to, shut that shit down too. So I don't know. That's for another day. But
Well, X, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. It's always a pleasure. I would love to have you on my show sometime. Hopefully we can connect for that. My audience would appreciate you. I guarantee it. Half of them are here right now. And yeah, if you have, let people know where to find you. Let people know that you got.
Sure, yeah. Shout out to my peeps for watching tonight. Always my followers on Twitter for tuning in to the Free Assange vigils. Whenever I come on, usually my own supporters are pretty good about tuning in. Guys, if you're a supporter of mine and you're not already neck deep in work to free Julian, then you're just on the shit list. So most of my people know what to be doing. But thanks for tuning in, guys, tonight, all my peeps. If you're more interested in stuff about me and my situation, especially how it overlaps with the idea of information activism in general, political asylum, and my own situation, commanderx.info. You can get pretty much everything there, from my Twitter to all my social media accounts are listed there. Everything about me is at commanderx.info. So if you're curious to learn more about it, I think my case is an enlightening case. I think it shines light. I think all of these cases, and I said this when Rory Love was fighting his case, all of our cases are interconnected and they're all important. When Rory Love won his extradition case in the very same courts that Julian is fighting in, that was a victory for Julian before he even made it to the dawn. When I came across the border of Mexico and walked into that INM office and got political asylum, that is a victory for Julian. It's all of it is all good. So, and do whatever you can. I mean, do everything. Now it's going to be a very short time, guys. We're going to win this in a matter of weeks. So we're not asking you to sign up to end the Vietnam War here. Okay, this is not going to be hard. It's going to be easy and it's going to be fun. So just get out there and make it happen. And I think that we'll have good news in a little bit. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. I'm going to go. My battery's probably going to die soon anyway, so I'll let you all go. Peace. Thanks for having me on. I'll come on any other shows anytime. Just the kids know how to get up with me.
All right.
We truly appreciate you having you here with us, Commander. It's awesome to bring you on. So we're going to pivot. We're going to pivot here to talk about some news that's coming out, some articles that Craig Murray's written lately, because he is one of the leading sources actually putting out information right now. So if we could have Josh pull up that article here about the glass box being a form of torture, that would be cool. So in Thursday's separate hearing on allowing Assange out of the armored box to sit with his legal team, I witnessed directly that barrister's ruling against Assange was brought into her court before she heard the defense counsel put the arguments and delivered by her entirely unchanged. I might start by explaining to you my position in this public gallery. The judge. All week, I deliberately sat in front right-hand seat. The gallery looks out through an armored glass window at the height of about 7 feet above the courtroom. It runs down one side of the court and the extreme right hand of the public gallery is above the judge's bench, which sits below perpendicular to it. Remarkably, therefore, from the right-hand seats of the public gallery, you have an uninterrupted view of the top of the whole judge's bench and can see all of the judge's papers and computer screens. Mark Summers, QC, outlined that in the case of Bolshevik versus Russia, the European Court of Human Rights at Strasbourg ruled against the state of Russia because Belaskov had been tried in a glass cage particularly identical in construction and in position in the court in which Assange was now. It hindered his participation in the trial and his free access to counsel and deprived him of human dignity as a defendant.
So it gets worse than that. I mean, we've talked about this a couple of times, but it's worth repeating. The glass cage is just for optics. It's to let the people in the gallery and the people at home know exactly what they're going to do to you if you disclose information that the U.S. government doesn't want disclosed. Tommy Robinson had an assault charge, and he got to sit with his defense team. Julian Assange is not being held on a violent offense, yet he's in solitary confinement. He was arbitrarily detained in an embassy for 7.5 years. He's separated from his legal team, which means he can't communicate with his legal team. Finally, the last day of the hearing, Barrister let him wear a set of headphones so he could sort of hear what was going on, but could still in no way, shape, or form communicate with his freaking lawyers. That's optics. That's a silent show of force. And it doesn't that doesn't just slide by the number of independent journalists that were in that room. Mohammed Almazi, who's been on the show, he was inside a few of the days. Tariq Haddad was there. Kevin Gustola, was one of the handful of Americans that were over there. He was inside every day, and they've all commented about how just horrifying that was. Because aside from the grotesque and inhumane treatment of a non-violent political prisoner, it's a threat.
Well, and I don't really know anything about the UK justice system or their typical protocol. But I mean, I did a thread on Twitter the other day. In the United States, we've let people like the Boston bomber sit with his defense attorneys, and BTK, and I mean, all kinds of just horrible, serial killer, Samuel Little, all kinds of truly violent, evil, sadistic people sit in a courtroom beside their defense attorneys. And Julian Assange, who's never committed a violent crime in his life, who is this kind of frail intellectual who's been under lock and key for years and is worn down by that, and he has to sit behind a glass wall like Hannibal Lecter. It's crazy that is something that isn't being made a bigger deal out of. The fact that he can't communicate with his defense attorneys is insanity to me. I don't understand why people don't get why that's a serious issue. That's a huge threat of for everyone. It's not just Julian. If they can do that to him, they're gonna do it to you too.
The court went as far as disallowing him the ability to pass note to his attorney. It was fine one day and then they decided it wasn't. The sheer amount of
And they want to like take breaks every time he needs to consult with his attorneys. That's crazy. That's going to drag the trial out because he can't hear very well. And then when he can hear, if he wants to communicate with his lawyers, they have to literally take a break and go somewhere else so that he can communicate with his lawyers. That's ridiculous.
The entire, I mean, it's the word show trial gets thrown around a lot, almost to the point to where it doesn't quite have the impact that it needs to. But this judge, Vanessa Baraster, has been just showing open hostility to Julian Assange and his legal team. And we know a lot of this from Craig Murray. It's one of the reasons that this is an article that we're reading. Craig Murray was the one that pointed out the previous time that the Crown prosecutors were taking direction from the 5 U.S. State Department officials in the back of the room, and then just kind of parroting it over to Baraster, who was in full agreement and friendly and cordial with them and snappish at Julian. So there's why she hasn't been removed from this is beyond me. The blatant lack of a semblance of impartiality is nowhere to, it's just, again, it comes to what I've been saying. This is about the erosion. We get to watch the full erosion of rule of law. That's what's going on right now.
It really is crazy. And also, if Craig Murray and I think George Galloway, a couple other people, I know Craig Murray for sure tweeted about the other day, since we're talking about his article, his views from his, he did like the little daily rundown articles, one for each of the 4 days of the trial. He said like the first 2 had, huge amounts of views, and then it dropped dramatically. So everybody should go and find those articles and check them out. If you're following the trial, they're really must reads as far as I'm concerned.
I'm actually calling on the independent media here to do a better job.
Yes, word.
I'm extremely disappointed in the coverage, because we, as literal working fucking people that took a week out of our lives to go and do this, covered this better than anyone else in the independent media for the most part, as far as YouTubers go. And that's really disappointing to me, because I have a full-time job. I have 2 children that I raise alone. I have all of these other things that I literally picked up and set aside. I worked 7 hours last week, and I'm getting paid for that. And I have to pay my bills with that at the end of this week when I get the money put into my bank account. So the people that make video content for a living, I don't want to try to alienate them or be rude to them in any way, shape, or form or capacity by any means. But I just ask the people in this audience tonight, send them these articles, show them these clips, give them this information to cover, because I haven't seen Cassandra Fairbanks's audio covered in independent media at all. And it blows a hole in the trial.
Like, ask them to cover it. Like, don't just send them the articles. Say, hey, this needs more coverage. Could you do a quick video about this? Could you, do a synopsis of what's going on in the trial? Could you interview Cassandra Fairbanks about her releases? Can you, I
cannot believe that Cassandra Fairbanks is just both the call and our interview with her, because that's on Jason's channel too. Like, I can't believe that hasn't just ran wild. What she says in that interview that we got with her is just mind-blowing stuff. Like, you guys, you really have to go watch the whole thing. It is incredible. And you're right. I mean, for it to just be, a handful of people, or for us to be setting the pace when we do have all of the other shit that we have going on. Like, that's an indictment of media in general, but quote unquote, like woke or independent media specifically.
And there are people that have done a good job that have covered this. But I want to drive a point home here. We have 75 days until May 18th. We have 75 days until the next round of Julian's trials start. That that's less than 3 months. That is an incredibly small amount of time for us to literally educate as many people as we can in the public sphere about this. And you hear tons of talk across every political spectrum about 3% of the population, 3.5%, that's all you need to create change. I guarantee you more than 3.5% of the population support Julian Assange and would turn out for him. But 3.5% of the population aren't educated about his case enough because of the failures of our major media institutions. So I would really love to see the people here tonight at midnight on the East Coast and put this out to these people and say, please cover Julian's case. Like, we hear about the virus. We hear about 2020. We know that it's rigged. The person who's supposed to stand up for it being rigged isn't. So let's just focus on the news that no one else is talking about right now. And for every video they put up about the 2020 race, comment and say, hey, where's a video about Julian? Because there's so much news that came out last week that was not covered, and it just fucking kills me to have to sit here and see highlight after highlight after highlight of this 2020 bullshit. But no one's actually saying, these are what we're fucking losing. And it doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, left, right, middle, top, bottom, under a fucking rock. Like, this is some real shit that is not getting covered in real time, because at this point, it's a week old. And creators are going to be like, whoa, you know, it happened last week. Like, I'm not going to fucking cover it. Like, fucking cover it now. Like, if you haven't done it yet, cover every detail of this fucking case. Make your own mini documentary with all the information that you can find and put out a 2-hour piece about what happened. Put out a 5-minute piece about what happened 3 times a day. Just please, like, everyone in the independent media, please put out as much as you possibly can, because you are the people who get paid to do this full time. You are the people
not
that
only
get...
that, they have to pick up where the mainstream media is never, ever, ever, ever going to touch this. They should be doing 3 times as many videos as they think they should be doing on Julian Assange, just to pick up for the slack from the fact that mainstream media is either not reporting it or reporting it wrong. So, I mean, this, like I keep trying to explain to people that this is, if you think it's bad now, if you think your elections are rigged now, imagine when there is no more adversarial journalism. You think it's going to get better? No, it's going to get worse, way worse. Like, this is the Julian Assange trial is literally a turning point for humanity, for the history of humanity. Like, this is going to be something that has implications that are way more than we could even imagine. Like, this is going to impact so much for so long. And yes, I get it, the election's important, but you don't have to cover that in every single one of your videos. 1 video a day, 2 videos a day, 1 video a week.
All say the same shit.
Yeah.
And you're not learning anything.
Yeah.
Like, you can glean, you know, 131 poll stations closed from that tweet and get the entire gist of what happened, because we've all been, like, everybody that's on right now, we've all been telling you for years that this exact thing was going to happen. Maybe not 100% on how, but in a general, like, oh yeah, they'll purge votes, they'll shut down polling stations, they'll make it harder for people to vote in districts that are generally pro-Bernie. Well, fuck, you know, the smears are just starting, like, and this is, you know, a while ago, like, and they have only built, and people are like, you know, I'm showing how I can disagree with the 2-party duopoly by voting for the Democratic frontrunner in the primary. Like,
that's very revolutionary, Steve.
This is why we want the disaffected DSA members and the disaffected Bernie Sanders, not that, you know, mathematically, I mean, I guess if he just blew out every state from here to the convention, he might get 1901, but I don't see that happening. And a contested convention means a bullshit empty suit warmongering centrist, and it means 4 more years of Donald Trump, And Donald Trump, as we know from Cassandra Fairbanks, because she told it to us while we were sitting on a couch with her, Donald Trump has been after Julian Assange the entire fucking time.
And it's for his own personal political gain, nonetheless.
Yeah.
It is for Julian to say something that has already been said. It's for Julian to reveal a source. And I would like to put it out there. His name was Seth Rich. We went and took a picture at the intersection that he was murdered with candles that couldn't light because of the wind that says his name was Seth Rich. And if that's what it's going to take to get Julian not extradited, is to cover Washington, D.C. in fucking posters that say his name was Seth Rich, then that's what it's going to take. But you can't vote as hard as you can without voting with your feet. And you can't vote as hard as you can without voting with your wallet. And you can't vote as hard as you can without making as much noise as humanly possible. And that's what I really hope that we can inspire people to do, is to be the change in their community, to be the person that's willing to walk outside, put a poster on a telephone pole, and walk to the next pole to put another one on. Because that's how you get issues in front of people's faces on a local level, and that's how you create change in a society. Because if you have, let's say, 20 people between 20 cities all doing this in a coordinated way, it may not be covered by the mainstream media, but it doesn't have to be, because it's being covered by the people driving to work, breaking their daily monotony with a no more torture sign on an overpass. And that makes a statement. That drives a point home into people's fucking hearts that something is wrong, to the point that US citizens have to stand up against our government torturing our citizens, in the case of Chelsea Manning, Jeremy Hammond, as well as all of the other people in our legal slave process, as well as persecuting a journalist that is not a US citizen and claiming that the Espionage Act, a national security law, applies, but the Constitution does not.
That was lovely.
I
gotta say, that was right on. I'm gonna pull up the picture that we took, because we found out the exact corner where Seth Rich was murdered, and that was actually across the street, because
we didn't want to put it up in front of a residential area.
Yeah, we
across
didn't
the
put
street
it
there
up
was
right in front of a house there was like a corner store, and so it was a quote unquote more public space, and there was room for the candles, so that worked out. But yeah, I mean, it was a well lit, not sketchy. There were like cops that were a couple of blocks away that were just being cops. Like, it wasn't like we were walking into old DC in, the late 80s, early 90s, when people were getting murdered just for showing up. Like, nothing about the narrative for Seth Rich fits. Nothing. And I really do hope that with all of the lawsuits that Ed Butowski filed, that one of the 15 or whatever he threw, one of them sticks, because then we'll actually get real information about what happened. And we can speculate, and there's a lot that we do know that makes the speculation probably fairly close to the reality of the situation. But man, it would be nice to have documents on that.
And so we have a couple more articles that we're going to get through here. Do we want to do the LA Times next, or do we want to do the stuff about the lawyers from the extradition case from the Canary? I would say we could start with the Canary article and then go from there.
Good.
If you could get that pulled up for us, please, Josh. So this article is titled, "More Bombshells from Assange's Lawyers, Extradition Case Exposed a Serious Flaw." A serious flaw in the U.S. extradition case against Julian Assange has been exposed by lawyers representing the WikiLeaks founder. Consequently, the defense has called for the extradition to be denied. In the course of the proceedings, the defense also revealed more bombshells, including how witnesses will be called back up, claims to direct political interference by the United States in the extradition process. The political nature of WikiLeaks. At the extradition hearing, Edward Fitzgerald for the defense referred to the submission to the court, which quoted from the 2013 U.S.-UK extradition ratified in 2007. Extradition shall not be granted if the offense for which extradition is requested is a political offense. The submission referred to a number of cases where it was successfully shown that extradition was denied because the offense, including the charge of espionage, was considered political. To back up their claim that Assange's activities are political, the defense quoted U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's favorite description that goes, "WikiLeaks walks like a hostile intelligence service and talks like a hostile intelligence service." Even computer misuse as alleged by the U.S. in this context could be seen as a political offense. And to provide further clarity, the defense showed how the Lords of the House specified that it is, not necessarily for the defendant in such cases, but seeking political power or the overthrow of a government. The submission concluded that the court should dismiss the extradition request. The article goes on a little bit further too, but I'm going to just cut it there to see kind of what you guys think about it before we dive back in.
Well, Taylor did a really good video with, I'm not for the life of me going to remember his name, but the legal expert when she was in London about the difference between the Extradition Act and the Extradition Treaty. And it's kind of complicated, but if people go watch that video, that guy does a great job of kind of trying to explain the difference and how that all works. But yeah, I don't see how they can try to claim that this isn't political, because it clearly is. I mean, I don't know. It just seems like they're reaching, definitely, for sure.
Well,
And unless
they have to. They have to.
Yeah.
Because WikiLeaks has been such a fucking effective thorn in the side of empire. And they can't come flat out and say, we're slowly torturing this man to death because he exposed just how craven and criminal and to the core evil we are, because that doesn't market well. So they have to make it about all of this just fantastical crap, because their only other recourse is to tell the truth, and that's that's not going to happen.
Well, Caitlin Johnstone actually the other day wrote an article. She made a really good point. At this point, we kind of find our, like, as Julian supporters, on the offense for a change, because right now, what it really does come down to, and what she says in her article is, do you believe journalists should be jailed for exposing war crimes? Yes or no? It's that simple. It's that cut and dry right now. Like, there is no other reason why he is being held in Belmarsh, being tried for this extradition hearing, other than the fact that he exposed war crimes. And you're either on the side of the war criminal or you're on the side of the person exposing them. It's that black and white. And pick a side and then start fighting.
Absolutely, because everyone likes to be locked in team play. They like the red and blue and all the bullshit that comes around and all the fun that they get to have on being on a team. So the team that I'm asking people to join, aside from Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green Party, Independent, Lib, Conservative, whatever you consider yourself, make your first team human. Make your first team about the fact that we're here together, regardless of ideology. Because if we, as a collective society, lose this case, it's over. We have no ability to have political differences because we can't even discuss it. We can't even get accurate information to know about the policies that we would like to change, to know about the wars that are happening in our name. To the point that if it wasn't for institutions like WikiLeaks, the shadow war in Africa would mostly still be dark. And like, I just want to say thank you to them, because it got as far as the current editor of WikiLeaks being thrown out of the court on Monday simply as an act of power, right? So they threw
tried to throw him out again too.
Yeah.
They let him back in to try and throw him out again.
Yep. Simply because they have the ability to do that, because there are so few people watching. And it's intentional. They censor the fuck out of everything. They'll come in, they'll bust out a stream, they'll fuck up your audio quality when it gets uploaded to YouTube. And it's because this actually fucking matters. Like, no one's going and interrupting a fucking piece on your YouTube channel about Joe Biden, because ultimately they don't give a fuck, because he's running so Trump can win again. Right.
Well, that's the thing, though, and that's why these content creators are so hesitant to put their names next to Julian Assange's, because they're
well, because if they don't now, their name will be put next to Julian Assange's as United States torture victims.
Yeah.
And that's what I want these people to fucking understand, is there is a small window of time where we can actually get this changed, where we can have representation, where we can have accountability, and we can have justice, not just for getting Julian out of prison, but for the crimes that he revealed. Because the tide is changing, but it's going to take everyone in a post-partisan dialogue to drive this point home for the next 75 days, plus the following 3 weeks, plus the following forever until they drag us out in chains. Like, and that's the point that we're at, is we need people who are willing to have their channels interrupted. Because
and silence is complicity. Like, if you remain silent, you are complicit. You're going to have to take some responsibility for the outcome of what happens. This is, I mean, I really just get so tired of trying to explain to people how critical this is. This is a major turning point. And I mean, a free press is the foundation of democracy. Without that, what do we have? Like, we're screwed. It's a massive leap into legitimate fascism, and that's terrifying.
And for all the anti-fascist organizers out there, this is a time to get involved, right? This is a time for the wheat pasting, for the banner dropping, for the spontaneous rallies that we all know you have the ability to hold. Because guess what? You're not going to have a counter protest when you're fucking standing up for Julian Assange, because the only counter protesters that show up are going to be paid to be there by a private security intelligence firm.
Yep. All those people that you show up to fight with, they're going to be holding the same signs you are.
Right. And once
weird? Won't that be weird? Like then you might actually have to have a genuine human conversation about, you know, the direction that you want your country to go, or what you think government does or shouldn't do. And you can have, you know, a mutual respect, knowing that you both stand together on this thing. It's a starting point. That's what we're doing. That's what we're creating, and we would like you to come help us create it.
And it doesn't take it doesn't take someone to tell you to do this. I mean, maybe it does. Maybe that's why we're here, is to be
No, it
asked.
totally does. Very, very few people have come to this conclusion on their own. or
But
at least
Well, the truth is if you actually want change, you're going to have to have uncomfortable conversations with people you don't agree with. Like, that's what it's going to take. If you actually want change, you're going to have to talk to people you don't agree with and try to figure out a way you can work together. It's us against them. It's that simple.
Sam Tripoli says all the time too, we have more in common than we do different. We do. And that's the case for an overwhelming majority of the population, regardless of what, media will tell you, regardless of what a lot of independent media will tell you. We're more alike than we are different. It's true. And the fact that we need to have a conversation about why it's important to not side with the war criminals on this
that's
kind of shows you how effective the propaganda has been. The same year that they had the secret warrant drawn up for Julian Assange, they passed that NDAA that legalized propaganda.
And the new NDAA puts.
Yeah, people don't know enough about this. Go into that a little bit.
So the new NDAA, the NDAA for 2020 to 2022, which is the National Defense Authorization Act. It's literally the directive for how law enforcement and intelligence communities should be acting and what they should be looking for. It puts hacktivists, leaktivists, and public disclosure organizations in the same line as Al-Qaeda and ISIS. How is that possible? How have we decayed to the point that a leaktivist and a public disclosure organization, which is literally anyone that has a YouTube channel, any major media institution, is a public disclosure organization? How is it that can go through and the independent media doesn't light on fire? Like, how is it that they can pass that we can go?
Didn't you hear? Elizabeth Warren said something entirely predictable and utterly lame in the scope of what's really going on. Didn't you hear? For some weird reason, Bernie Sanders is getting screwed out of an election. Donald Trump.
When did we find out about the DNC rigging elections? Like, when did we read their own words about the elections that they are rigging? Because I'm pretty sure there's a lawsuit that's been out for a couple years now that kind of referenced some material that was about some emails that the Russians didn't have any part of. So, like,
that's going back to the Supreme Court. The DNC are appearing in front of the Supreme Court. The DNC fraud lawsuit.
Is that the same lawsuit where they argued that they don't even have to hold elections, that they could just pick a smoke-filled back room and pull a candidate out?
Yeah, technically, there's no such thing as a Democrat. The DNC is a private entity that is not obligated to follow its own bylaws or charter. They
could literally put the kibosh on the primaries right now and say Hillary Clinton is the nominee.
Well, they did. Look at Super Tuesday. Look at Iowa. They literally are, and people still act like it's legitimate. There
hasn't been a single caucus or primary that has not been fucked up in some way. And everybody's like,
I don't even support the guy that they're fucking.
I know, I don't either.
Like,
and I'm more mad about than they are.
That doesn't mean that, like, you shouldn't point it out, like, oh my God. And it's so, like, it gets hard to defend Bernie.
Yes.
It does. Like it makes it really fucking difficult, but it's still one of those things where, like, what's happening to him is bigger than him. What's happening to Julian Assange is bigger than Julian Assange. And Julian Assange is fucking why most people know just how corrupt the DNC is and know why Bernie Sanders got screwed out of it in 2016. And we've got morons running around screaming at Tulsi Gabbard supporters like it's their fucking fault without any trace of irony. that this is exactly what the Hillbots were doing to Bernie Sanders voters in 2016. It's exactly what the campaign was doing to Bernie supporters in 2016. It was sanctioned by fucking herself and Podesta and all the other people that Spirit Cook to go ahead and set forth that narrative. And they're doing it. They're voter shaming. They're screaming at Tulsi, this is your fault. Grow up. Why can't you just get behind the clear winner? And there's no irony there. None whatsoever. And every time I make the point, you know this shit's rigged, right? Well, we can outvote the... No, you can't.
Oh, just phone bank harder, Steve. Just phone bank harder.
You can't,
look, the problem becomes even when you phone bank harder, someone like Michael Bloomberg can step in and pay prison labor $1 an hour to make the phone calls for him. That's what he was doing. There is an article that says, well, the secret to presidential campaigns is prison labor phone calls. That's a fucking thing. Like, and I just showed you how slavery is legal because I read one line out of the U.S. Constitution. Like, and we can't talk about changing that. The whole conversation around Bloomberg can't be centered around the fact that he's exploiting slavery for his presidential campaign. And then maybe we could do a little investigating and say, well, what other candidates are using prison labor?
Hillary Clinton wrote about having slaves at the governor's mansion in Arkansas. She wrote about that like it was a neat little anecdote. Like, this shit ain't new. Bloomberg, like, we live in a fucking cartoon. The Republican mayor, the former Republican mayor of New York City, is running against the bankrupt real estate mogul from New York City in the WWE Hall of Fame. Sleepy Joe Sniffs-a-Lot is running against the guy who bankrupted casinos. Bernie Sanders is running against the Democratic Party.
Well, he should be.
Yeah.
He should be.
He's
not really.
But, I know that. Like,
right.
And look, the Democrats are morons to begin with, because if they let Bernie win, they get to keep their party until literally the collapse of the climate. He would keep people voting in the Democratic Party for at least until fucking fiery destruction. Like, it... But no, because what, dude, his entire platform is like marginally tinkering around the edges of capitalism, maybe making things a little bit more comfortable while we welcome, the collapse of the planet, until enough people get scared into believing that even though geoengineering didn't have anything to do with the collapse of the planet, it'll be geoengineering that saves us.
So I'm gonna pop in here to pull up the last of the videos that we have for this evening. This one is by DM25. So I'm gonna pop this here real quick because this is a really, really good piece about just the state of everything in Julian's case right now.
Let's start off with probably the most painful topic. Yeah. Our mutual friend Julian Assange. You managed somehow to spend some hours with him.
Yes, I visited him last week at the Belmarsh high security prison, together with his wonderful dad, John Shifton. We did get 2 hours, and John was so nice, he allowed me to use up that 2-hour slot to have a very long conversation with Julian. Look, 2 words. Gratuitous cruelty. That characterizes his treatment in that prison. He should not be in prison at all. I mean, he's not been charged with anything really.
Well, it's hard to commit treason against a country of which he is not a citizen, with allegations that took place outside that country.
Well, at the moment, he's not being held in the United States. He's held in the United Kingdom. This is an extradition hearing. He should be bailed. And even if he is not bailed, there's no excuse for having him in a high security prison where he's locked up for a minimum of 22, sometimes 23 hours a day. That you do to somebody that you're trying slowly to murder. And it's completely disanalogous, out of proportion with what is going on, which is a hearing for extradition.
Is it inevitable, in your view, that he will be extradited?
No, I don't believe in inevitability. It's possible. It keeps me up at night. But I would like to imagine that at the upper echelons of the British justice system, there are High Court judges or Supreme Court judges that will assert their independence, because the case is very clear. 3 questions. Firstly, is this a political offence or is this a criminal offence? Because if it is a political offence, the United Kingdom does not extradite to the United States, according to the treaty, anyone for political offences. Secondly, should he get a fair trial? Is there any chance that he will get a fair trial in the United States? It's clear that there is zero probability of that. We know how the system works there when treason is on the table. And thirdly, would he survive prison there, the Supermax prison system? There's no doubt he wouldn't. Already his health has deteriorated massively. Already the UN rapporteur on torture and 165 doctors have ruled that...
I haven't seen him since the Ecuadorian Embassy, years ago now. And even then I feared for him. It was... he's been out of the light. He's been out of the sunlight, not the spotlight, for so long.
Yeah. And what is quite astonishing is that basic rights that all sorts of prisoners have, the worst murderers on earth, he has been denied. He has been applying now for 8 months to be given the opportunity to exercise in the gym with other prisoners. He's been denied that. He's been regularly denied the only opportunity he has for walking, which is 30 minutes a day in a very confined yard where he can barely see the grey skies, around the Belmarsh Prison through the walls. And even that, for instance, the day when I visited him, because he got 2 hours with me, he was denied that 30 minutes of walking around. If you look at the way in which he's being treated inside the courthouse, so he's behind a glass container.
Looking like Adolf Eichmann.
Yeah, not allowed to confer with his lawyers. And this is an extradition treaty. It is quite astonishing.
Is he surviving mentally?
He's in a very dark place. He told me, and he asked me to convey this to you. And
Did we lose Andrew?
I think we did. That's all right. Okay. Yeah, it's always surprising to me, but I understand, but it still surprises me that people still have to remind the media where Julian Assange is imprisoned, or like what happened to him prior, or what he's faced. I get when you're just talking to someone. I was at work earlier today, and the client was just being nice, but asked me what I was up to or what I'd been up to. I hadn't seen him for quite a while. So I told him about DC, and we got into a fairly drawn out but incredibly productive conversation about Julian Assange. But he didn't know where he was at. He believed that there was a political, a partisan political motive for him to release the DNC emails, and that if it wasn't exactly coordinated by the Trump campaign, it was certainly sanctioned. And by the end of it, he was looking up on his phone as to where he could buy a copy of Cypherpunks. But he's also like a really intelligent dude who doesn't buy into the whole right-left paradigm to begin with. Although I think he was talking about voting for Bernie yesterday, because again, nothing says I'm a revolutionary like voting for the Democratic frontrunner. And I'm not going to say who actually said it symbolized, a vote to end the duopoly. But that's a very intelligent person too. But that's a person who picked a team. And why you're picking teams in a rigged election, instead of screaming about the rigged election and screaming about the potential death of a free press and screaming about the torture and just continued inhumane treatment of Julian Assange, I don't know.
Well, and I think that's important that you point that out, that you had this conversation, because I spent basically my entire appointment with my shrink talking about Julian Assange a couple weeks ago, and he is kind of a libertarian. Obviously, he's a very smart dude, but he didn't really know what was going on, and so I went through the whole thing and we talked about it, and by the end of it, he was, 100% on board, and totally agreed with everything I was saying. The only thing that he knew is that Julian hacked the DNC. That's really about the extent of what he knew. I had a conversation with the guy that does my hair. Like, if you just have conversations with people and just disavow them of whatever illusions they're under or whatever lies they've been fed, you can have conversations with people and just explain it. And once they hear the facts, it's so obvious. This isn't even a tough call. It's not a tough call. You should support Julian Assange, even if you, and I hate when people do this, even if you don't like him, which I don't know how anybody can like him or not like him unless you know him personally. I don't know him. He could be a giant asshole for all I know. I don't care. But this is so much bigger than him, and this isn't a tough call. This is not a tough call. There's only one right answer to this situation. Did we get Andrew back?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I came back. My phone freaked out. I didn't realize the video was still running because my phone completely disconnected from the internet. So sorry about that. I didn't mean to cut the video early. But we're going to start to wrap up. I would like to thank everybody for tuning in with us tonight. This has been a fun, going on 3 hours now. We're here every Wednesday. We'll be back. We will be in the streets. We will be at organizing events. We will be at DSA events. And I hope that by you include yourself in that, because this isn't possible. We cannot save this man's life and save free speech if we all don't do what we can. So just get out there, do what you can with the time, money, and resources that you have, with the connections that you have. Even if your friends don't do it with you, do it alone. I have my 3 best friends in my life who didn't even watch the vigils that we did throughout Washington, D.C. for the week. But I got to come back and I got to educate them on everything that happened during Julian's trial. So I just ask that the people watching now really take Misty's advice and have these conversations, because it's not hard. It's literally one line. Julian Assange is facing 175 years in prison for the crime of revealing United States war crimes, the torture program at Guantanamo Bay, and the corruption in our international relationships. Do you think Julian Assange should be in jail for 175 years for showing us that our government bombed a reporter? Do you think Julian Assange should be in prison for 175 years for the crime of showing first responders being killed? Do you think Julian Assange should be in prison for the crime of revealing the torture programs in Guantanamo Bay? And I'm 99.999% sure that everyone in the audience right now answered all those questions the exact same way. So I hope that regardless of political affiliation, regardless of your ists and isms, that we can actually figure out a way to do this together. And even if it's your group doing something separate from the other ideologically different group doing something, and you march next to each other, that's fine. On the front of the sign, put free Julian, free speech. On the back of the sign, put the issue that you care about. So when we all march forward, the cameras and the people standing against us see this united front. And then everyone in the group behind can see the issues that all of those other people marching with you care about. So I just ask that everyone just take this opportunity to literally do anything you can to get the word out there and proliferate this information. Because if we don't do it as the community that knows, no one will. You can find me on Twitter at Andrew Zigmund, Zigmund. You can find the show here at Action4 Assange. I would like to thank Misty for joining us. I'd like to thank Commander X and Jason Burmis all for coming on tonight. This was uplifting after the fucking craziness that we've had for the last week as a community. This was great. So thank you for everybody joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. It always makes me feel better to get on here and talk with people who understand. Sometimes I feel like I'm a bit of a ranting, raving lunatic. So it's always nice to be able to have a conversation about people who really get it. So yeah, thanks for having me on. And thank you guys so much for what you guys did in DC and in London. You guys did amazing work. It was really fun to watch you guys on all your little adventures. And it was really cool to see everything you were able to put together in, a relatively short amount of time with the shoestring budget. I mean, it was really cool to see you guys do that. And I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your life. It's been tough for me to be able to do that right now. But for you guys to take time out of your lives to go and truly, try to make an impact. I'm proud to know you guys. You guys did great.
And where can people find you, Misty?
Oh, well, you can just find me on Twitter. It's at Sarcasm Stardust. I tweet all the time, y'all.
Right on. I have a long list of people to thank, but before I do that, Taylor wanted to make sure that Tarek Haddad and Kit Clarenberg get vocal thanks from her. The London trip got shanghaied, and I ended up not being able to go. The crew that she was with there really stepped up and fucking made it come together. She's got incredible footage from that. Activism Munich, which is just a internationally recognized badass organization, has been restreaming Action for Assange footage starting last week, and they're going to continue to do so, and that is so freaking amazing. So a big thanks to them. The people who co-sponsored the DC events, Popular Resistance, Code Pink, Women Against Military Violence. Did I get that right?
Women Against Military Madness.
Okay, yeah.
People's Power Assembly of Baltimore.
Yeah.
We had
1 versus 5 Eye campaign. Uzi Dawson. we showed up Friday morning to the hearing for the embassy protectors. And outside we got to we watched them get presented was it like a piece of art, and it was a whole bunch of different people that made and signed it. At any rate, it was really cool. There's pictures of that I know on Popular Resistance. Next week, Kevin Zeese will be joining us, I believe.
They have a court case. If you're in the DC area, real quick, they have a court case Friday at 9 a.m. I don't want to ask anyone to go there to be rowdy. I literally just want to ask people to go there and sit with them and be present and be a witness to what our government is doing again to these fucking courageous people that held their ground and kept up international law, right? These people that said, no, this is an embassy. This is a space that is recognized by a government independent of what the hell the U.S. wants to say. And they occupied it until they got ripped out of that building. So
and
I
the
just want to
case against them was sickening. What the jury wasn't allowed to know was just about everything. Like there's an article on Popular Resistance. I'm pretty sure that I covered it, and which brings me to my closing point. I have a show called Slow News Day. You can find it on YouTube by typing in Slow News Day Podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Slow News Day Show. There's a Facebook page for Slow News Day. I don't hang out on Facebook much, but there's a page there. Thanks to everyone who helped make the actions and the events and the coverage possible. And we couldn't be happier with the way that the week in DC went. It was incredibly surprising at times, but what we're building is a nonpartisan movement, a post-partisan organization, and we'd like y'all to, come be a part of that. So until next time, good luck to us all.